Right, see, this was the main problem with the Kage Bunshin. It had nothing to do with the fact that for most users, it drained their chakra till they were teetering on the verge of collapse, or the result was that each time an extra or multiples were created, it would invariably be weaker than the last. No, the true peril lied in its weak chakra matrix and reliability on his brain's current activity. He already knew that it wasn't the brightest of ideas to have his copies working on delicate and quite dangerous experiments when he himself ran the risk of bashing in his cranium and thus disrupt the tenuous hold of the clone's molecular cohesion. It was another point entirely to find himself knocked unconscious while courting his beloved metal goddess and her comrades, quite the harmless endeavor. He probably should make sure he was completely withdrawn from his volatile teammates before a clone attempted a new chemical compound that would make his bombs more efficient and powerful. The wind blowing his duster back and forth from the 10-foot-wide hole on the 4th level of his apartment complex, created when two rather unstable elements mixed due to his clone's abrupt departure, wholeheartedly agreed with his conclusion. Naruto glanced down at Metaru, who was currently looking out the rather breachable part of his security. The small metal fox gazed back at him, copper eyes moist with thin oil. "You know I blame you for this." Metaru whined and hit his head with his paws. Of course, now came the added complication of dealing with an omnipotent, and mostly likely insanely bored, biomechanical chakra-based entity lodged somewhere within his cerebral cortex with no sure way of contact. There was the option of repeating the chain of events that led to their initial meeting, but Naruto contemplated on the fallibility of causing irreversible mental trauma every time he felt like talking to it. Which meant there was only one course of action he could take. As the Narakuns crawled over the room, setting temporary reconstruction measures over the hole, Naruto nodded to himself. "I have to see Ibiki-kun." Now, when most citizens of Konoha thought of the building that housed the interrogation department of its shinobi ranks, the first image that popped into mind was a towering fortress with spiked buttresses and steel-plated windows, gnarled trees and decrepit vegetation sprawled out like an abandoned field, and the cries of the damned wailing through all hours of the day and night. And they would be quite wrong on most counts. In all actuality, the entrance to the underground prison and torture chambers of the village of the Leaves' seedy underbelly was probably the most nondescript and possibly even cutesy building in its limits. It looked like a basic 2-floor building, painted a tasteful viridian green with a small garden lining the front and sides with all manners of wildflowers. There was even a small sign picketed next to the door that jokingly had the words, "Beware of Enko," scrawled in chicken scratch handwriting. And there was absolutely no hint of terrified screaming or pained shouts for it to stop. This was because the entire interior of the building, and its 4 underground levels, was lovingly and painstakingly soundproofed so that not even the usage of a sheep, 2 gallons of egg-white paint, a neon pink boa, and 5 square yards of saran wrap would make the slightest peep. Naruto found the acoustics so relaxing. Waving a greeting to the guards in the entrance chamber, who in response only gave acknowledging grunts before focusing on more pressing matters like that bloody Sudoku, Naruto walked to the sealed security door, swiped a bloody thumb over the analyzer, and then made his way down to the bowels of the department. Upon finding the person he was looking for, a wide grin split his face. "Ibiki-kun." The heavily scarred man turned from the viewing window and glanced at Naruto, a corner of his lips turning up ever so slightly. "Ah, welcome, Uzumaki. You busy?" "Nah. Let me just finish up this one thing and I'll be free until my next appointment." Naruto sidled up next to him and looked through the window. In it was a blindfolded ninja, most likely cloud from his hair and skin color. He was fairly scuffed up, several small gashes leaking blood from his temples and forehead, and multiple bruises and burn marks around his upper torso and arms. Naruto smushed his face to get a closer look. He knew. Ibiki shrugged. The usual. Secret mission, unrecognized by his village, willing to take the objective. To his grave. He fingered his bandana, where no doubt his own scars were aching in remembrance. "I've only been working him over periodically. Seems fairly young, so he was probably some hotshot that got too cocky and over his head. Only one to get captured from his group?" A chuckle. "Pretty much." Awkward silence. I'm about to test another one of your prototypes. Seems appropriate to try the rookie on the rookie. Which one? You know, the one that... He snapped his fingers, a tiny spark flashing from the coarse metal in his gloves. Really? Naruto shouted, his voice peaking in a light-hearted squeak. You're finally gonna use that one? Yay! Ibiki grinned lopsidedly and patted the boy on the head like a pet. He then lumbered over to the connecting door, unlocked it, and walked in. He stepped behind the cloud Nin before ripping the blindfold off. Naruto watched as the bear of a man asked the Nin several questions, the captive not answering back a single time. Ibiki yanked the Nin's head backwards by his hair and was rewarded with a spitball right between the eyes. The prisoner sneered in hard-earned victory. Ibiki stared for a moment, sighed, wiped the spit from his face, and then walked to the other side of the room. He picked up two single-pronged rods, one end with a small metal sphere, the other with wires connecting to a machine. Tapping them together, an arc of electricity bounced back and forth. The prisoner's eyes noticeably widened at the sight. Ibiki shrugged, said something, and then touched a prong to either temple. The entire room lit with the glare of pseudo-lightning. Naruto smiled joyfully as his pupils contracted to pinpricks. He liked this technique. He could see it through his eyelids. Heck, he was still seeing it now. Ibiki replaced the instrument back in its holding receptacle and walked out of the room, ignoring the Nin's spastic flopping. When he opened the door, the smell of barbecue lingered on his clothes. He slapped his hands together, brushing off some ashes. Naruto gazed hopefully at the older man, eyes shining, hands clasped together. Ibiki growled. Well, I suppose I can call that as a B-dash. I didn't get any info out since he passed out, but I'm pretty sure I'll get something later, so I don't have to repeat myself. Naruto drooped at the evaluation. Only a B-dash? The head of the interrogation department pursed his lips at the blonde's forlorn expression. He rolled his eyes and laid a hand on the boy's shoulder. But, since it made him piss himself with only one application, I think I can bang it up to an B+. Just try to find a better way of modifying the effect. Now, what can I do for you? Perking up at the raised grade, Naruto grinned fiercely. I need you to shrink me. Ibiki stared blankly at him, raised a finger and opened his mouth, paused, put down his hand and closed his mouth, and then turned and walked away. He barely made it a meter before Naruto tackled him behind the knees and brought them both down like a sack of potatoes. Ibiki-kun, I'm not doing a mind dive on you, Uzumaki. His face was calm as he lashed a foot at the young teen's face. Naruto deftly dodged the attack and hunkered down closer to Ibiki's waist. But why? Maybe because the last time you specifically asked me to, they found me in a tree in only a lime green thong thinking I was a squirrel. Now, if only he could find the right torque and leverage to pry the Jinchuriki from his thigh. Well, what's wrong that? Blast, Naruto locked an arm around his knee. Now Ibiki had to decide whether a broken leg was worth the lichen child's removal. It would heal. I don't own a lime green thong. Why was it so hard to remove a barely pubescent boy from his body? The sheer weight difference should have made it a given. You own a pink one, which just makes me even more forget it. Why don't you just have Anko do it? I'm sure she'd be more than willing to. Can't, Naruto pouted. Every time she does I wake up drizzled in syrup and Anko completely naked. And then G-san has to explain the birds and the bees, and I still don't know what 15 IBRC certified means. As long as I never hear those words come out of your mouth again, I will check your brain. Which ones? Anko naked? No, actually, that happens enough that I've been desensitized to it. Drizzled in honey. Then, how about you never mention anything within the last sentence and we'll call it even? Deal. Naruto finally disentangled himself from Ibiki and the man led him to a free room. Ibiki had the two sit in opposite chairs. He watched as Naruto looked around, that always present manic yet curious expression in his eyes. Ibiki sighed, hoping that this wouldn't result in the same circumstances again. He wasn't that big a fan of acorns. So, what am I looking for? I just want to find out if there's an abnormality in my brain waves. Again, what am I looking for? Naruto puffed out his cheeks, looked to the upper left and settled back in his chair, blowing out air. Point. Look, I heard there's been a crack in my dreamscape. I just want to know where it is and, if possible, an easy way to access it without having to resort to more drastic actions. Like the hammer-to-head equation. In his limited experience with that formula, the only possible answer equaled bad. Should I be concerned as to the nature of this crack? Probably, right? Well, as long as it doesn't consume my soul, I'll be fine. Define consume. Shut up and sit still. Naruto threw a sloppy salute. Yes, sir. Ibiki frowned and then suddenly jabbed his hand forward, piercing Naruto's skull, right above his brow with his pointer, middle finger and thumb. Red lines cut through Naruto's skin as they connected each finger to one another in a triangle. Naruto's eyes went blank, his body slouching forward as his mind opened up for exploration. Grunting mildly, Ibiki twisted his triangle seal a quarter clockwise. The skin moved with the cycle-like plates, revealing a murky hole where the blonde's forehead used to be. Reaching slightly into the void, Ibiki pinched his fingers together and drew out a single silvery thread. He then took the free end and placed it on his brow. Immediately the surroundings shifted to the sewer that was Naruto's mindscape. This technique was dangerous enough, only really effective and safe when performed on a willing participant. But using it on Naruto was a completely different can of worms. Ugly, furry, manifold-tailed worms. He quickly found the crack Naruto mentioned, though in this case it looked more like a rotten fissure in the sewer walls. Ibiki briefly wondered what on this great, green earth could possibly affect the little psycho like that, but decided against asking any further. Who knew what lurked within the heart of Naruto? He certainly didn't and was damn proud of it. This was most likely a stupid idea, but hey, the kid knew what he was doing and could accept the consequences. Well, at least he did an admirable job making it seem like he knew what he was doing. It only took a few swings of the metaphorical hammer to bring the wall down, especially since that was what the owner was planning on in the first place. Instantly, the scent of musty fur assaulted his senses. Ibiki made it a point not to discover what the origin of that smell was. Let the Hokage deal with it. The blonde was his grandson in all but name by now. Ibiki canceled the jutsu, allowing both himself and Naruto to return to the real world. When he saw that Naruto had recollected his full consciousness, he nodded. Well, I did all I could do. You should be able to access that part of your mindscape much easier now. Naruto grinned ferally. Thanks, Ibiki-kun. He remained silent for a few seconds. Any suggestions how? The man just shrugged. Naruto mirrored his actions. I'll figure it out for myself. Ibiki rolled his shoulders and flipped through his clipboard. So, what are you gonna do now? He smiled rashly. I'm gonna go have a chat with a very naughty computer program. Thanks again, Ibiki-kun. And bye-bye. With that, he gaily ran out of the room. Ibiki kept looking at where the Jinchuriki had left. Was that really the smart thing to do? Could he have maybe, just maybe, made a monumentally bad decision that would create far-reaching and critical repercussions for all of mankind and all known history? Could he have let his nonchalance and apathy let him make the worst judgment possible? Just what had he done? A horrific mistake? Ibiki flipped a page. Oh, Kunoichi from Grass. I hear they're real kinky. Ibiki grinned perversely and tucked the clipboard under his arm, whistling a jaunty tune as he exited the room. The melody bounced off the walls of the hallway, filling the building with the joy of music. Magic 8-Ball says, all signs point to yes. Q-Chi. I'm back, hack. Tepid water splashed around his soaked boots and pants, a faint echo repeating through the sewer system. Naruto plumbed his way to the Biju's hiding spot, a happy smile plastered across his face. So all it really took was a gross amount of undistilled alcohol to fall back into his mindscape. Excellent. After all, what were a few thousand brain cells in the quest for ever-evolving technological marvels? It's not like his fourth year of life was all that important to recall anyway. If it was, the memories would have run away quicker from the sake spirits. His brain was only as fast as the slowest cell, after all. Lack of neurological knowledge notwithstanding, he finally reached his mental destination. Coming to the grand bars that blocked in the greatest of the tailed beasts, Naruto skidded to a stop, creating a minor wave that crashed against cage and fur, sprinkling droplets everywhere. QB raised its head at its end user's arrival, great amber eyes blinking languidly. Greetings, Naruto Uzumaki. It stood up on its front legs, taking a sitting position. QB paused for a second. But what is this Kyuchi you speak of? You know, Kyuchi. It's a nickname. Naruto scoffed like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And you deserve an especially cute one. I see. Cocked its head. What is this feeling in my chest? It feels hot, like it is trying to burn me from the inside out. Naruto clasped his hands together and beamed. Does it feel like butterflies and gumdrops? Actually, it makes me want to test how much pressure it would take until your skeletal structure collapses on itself. Oh, that's anger. You know, when you want to destroy something so thoroughly that its very existence is erased from the space-time continuum. Ah, yes, that is the feeling I am currently experiencing. That name has made me angry. Hooray. He just made an all-powerful engine of death and destruction discover rage. Sarutobi Jizan would be so proud of him. Does that mean you love it? Kyuchi. I do believe I am seeing red, which is odd as I am built to usually only distinguish in monochrome. Perhaps it would be best if you refrained from that term. Never. It was at this point that the QB discovered another form of emotion that it had not experienced, or maybe even known, for ages: anxiety. It was anxious that its prospects in one Naruto Uzumaki were perhaps misplaced. Well, it supposed it would just have to make do. Say, Kyuchi. Ouch, its central processing unit. Naruto narrowed his eyes when he saw that QB had refocused its attention on him. Why did you attack Konoha? If you're a computer, there was no need to do so. Wouldn't you have been better off simply observing in a more clandestine fashion, if you approached the village at all? A prior member of your population intrigued me. He was able to bypass my firewalls, log directly into my central processor, and rewrite my programming to fit his needs. I wish to know how someone other than my end user could achieve such a feat. My attack on your village was simply a routine experiment to see if I could provoke such a reaction again. Instead, I was forcefully downloaded into your body. Hey, you remember what the guy who hacked you looked like? Unknown. That sector of my memory has been corrupted beyond repair. Your original end user. Corrupted. Why you aren't at this Spursy in the first place? Corrupted. Do you remember anything at all? I remember there is an experiment that Project Legend did not finish. Other than that, there is very little I can recall. My memory banks were extremely damaged at some point, and I have not been able to recover the lost data since that time. When was the damage accrued? My internal chronometer dates it at 987 years, 232 days, 10 hours, 4 minutes, and 26 seconds ago. However, since that time I have gained a great deal of new data that I have compiled into my system in preparation for return to Spursy. Really? Naruto rubbed his hands together. And would you be willing to share that data with me? The QB brushed its tail along the walls of its prison, breaking large chunks off before they mysteriously repaired themselves. I have already done so, since your first interaction with technology and the information associated with it. I have been able to slowly download my knowledge and memory capacity into your mind. Well, that's good then. He paused and frowned, a light going off in the back of his eyes. Wait, does that mean all of those awesome things that I came up with I didn't really come up with? That was all you? Affirmative. Well, that sucks. He stomped his foot down in a particularly dreggy section of the pool. And here I thought I was some scientific genius with brand new ideas that would revolutionize society. QB remained quiet as it attempted to rationalize the boy's thought processes and sense of pride. Wait, what the hell am I saying? I've got over a millennia worth of doomsday blueprints in my noggin, just waiting to be constructed. This is awesome. QB quickly came to the conclusion that attempting so was a pointless and ultimately forsaken endeavor. Winding down from his diatribe, Naruto rubbed the back of his neck. Say, could you maybe come down? Looking up like this is killer on my spine. Very well. There was no flash of ethereal light, no tremor that shook the land, no whining or pop to signify a change. There was just QB, now the size of one of the larger Inuzuka hounds. Naruto blinked, trying to accept the sudden and simple metamorphosis. It didn't take him too long. You can just change shape? Wicked. QB tilted its head. Being a chakra construct, I have no set form. The one seen before you is simply the default version given to me by my original end user. And the size. The most efficient. If I stayed in this one while still in the real world, the distortions created by having so much energy in such a concentrated area would inevitably cause problems with the laws of physics in the surrounding vicinity. Naruto stroked his chin. So you can be anything then? QB nodded once. In its place was a copy of Naruto. I am not bound by biological laws. An old woman. There is no danger in arranging my atomic structure to suit my objectives. A rock. Not even an organic shape is needed, though its current shape did not have a mouth, or even the vocal cords required to produce sound. QB's monotone and low voice still emanated from its body. So there is no point in becoming attached to a specific form, back to its original shape. The boy inventor's eyes gleamed with anticipation, and his mouth formed into a cruel parody of a smile. So then there's no problem if I request a specific body type? As long as the information of its structure and appearance can be compiled, I can make it. He rubbed his hands together. Excellent. With nary a moment wasted, he launched into a detailed description of his desired form. When finished, the QB took a moment to sift through the measurements, colors, and minor points. Its eyes sang with numbers and codes before they settled back down to their golden hue. Understood. The fox was gone. In its place stood a breathtaking female human about the same height as Anko. Her long, luxurious hair was the color of blood, crimson locks pinned up with black barrettes. A narrow face, sharp upturned nose, and full lips helped to accentuate the canted nature of her eyes, her amber irises framing cat-like slit pupils. A maternal body with full breast and rolling hips was refined to fetish fuel levels under the silk blouse, white doctor's coat, and skirt that just made it past indecent. Her long, tanned runner's legs were laced with stockings that crept their way into her skirt and ended in not very tasteful stilettos. QB's new human form pursed its luscious lips together. The action would cause lesser men to shiver and bow in reverence. On Naruto, it just made him grin more nastily. I have the sudden urge to have someone lick my feet. Is this normal? Perfectly. I am afraid I will never understand the behavioral instincts associated with humans and clothing. It gestured down at itself, causing parts of it to jiggle. Is this appropriate, Naruto Uzumaki? Perfect. The boy purred. You fit the image of the scientist's hot lab assistant exquisitely, my dear Kyuchi. Now the liquor had the addition of being blonde. I see. Is there a goal associated with this exercise? He parted his lips. Just figuring the best form for you to take as my new assistant. Oh, and you will now refer to me as Doctor. Just Doctor. QB tilted its head the other way. A stray strand of hair fell in front of its eyes. As you wish, Doctor. But how will that work? I am currently trapped inside your body, and I am afraid that the amount of assistance I can offer will be limited until that is addressed. Naruto bent forward, framing his chin with his finger and thumb, and, looking up at it with sinister eyes, laughed softly. You just leave that to me, Kyuchi. Don't worry, you'll be out in no time. Would that not be contradictory to the purpose of keeping me inside in the first place? He waved a hand flippantly. I'm sure you'll behave. He turned around and held his hands behind his back. After all, It's not like I'm going to be that much less destructive than you when the chips are down. He looked over his shoulder. Right? QB simply titled its head. Perhaps its prospects would not be in such dire straits, after all. History tends to put a positive spin on events, at least in the favor of the one writing it. Konoha was known as the most peaceful and powerful of the shinobi villages, but that was only completely settled after slaughtering an entire clan that had been stewing in vainly superior treason for a few generations. The Six-Path Sage was known as the greatest person in shinobi legends, a man who completely evolved ninja techniques by creating new, colorful, and most of all, obliterating ways to kill people. But in this case, Niji morosely pondered, there was no way history could view the antics and atrocities of one Naruto Uzumaki meeting one Tenten Changa in even the gentlest of lights. Because fate was a bitch like that. Ooh, welcome, Team 7. May your flames of youth never burn out. And because Lee was a moron. Niji watched from a short distance as the remains of Team 9 greeted the teacherless dregs of Team 7. The spandex-clad fool had made the suggestion of the two teams meeting up on their free time so as to strengthen the bonds of their youthfulness. In truth, this was probably just a way for the boy to futilely hit on the rosette, and Niji wanted no part in it. It was better to remain isolated than be brought down by the losers of society. That was until Tenten made the vague threat of asking him to test one of her weapons with that look in her eye. Between the choice of a few hours of annoyance and several days of hospital treatment, the choice was obvious. For heaven's sake, the girl had gotten worse since her initial contact with the mad pariah. Lee was shouting something incoherently, most likely about his desire to become the greatest taijutsu specialist and rise through the ranks to match their sensei, or about the blossoming of springtime, or and now he was flying due to a haymaker from the dyed fangirl. Funny, even if the girl was one of the more pathetic strains of this year's kunoichi, she had a surprising amount of power in that frail body. Niji averted his eyes when Naruto looked in his direction and suddenly perked up. He ground his teeth together when the blonde then proceeded to trot at a quick pace towards him. How bitter. How you doing, Niji-han? Naruto asked, that toothy grin annoying the Hyuga further. I am fine, Uzumaki, he replied. Although I do not see why you're here. Don't talk like that, Niji-han. We're all friends here. Niji allowed a snort to escape from his mouth. I fail to see the friendship that you seem to be implying. Naruto drew his lips together and cocked his head. Well, we're talking, aren't we? I'm pretty sure that constitutes at least a passing friendship. Plus, I know you're friends, so we're friends by association. Your logic is confounding. I can see why you were the bottom of your class. Yeah. Naruto laughed. He scratched his cheek. I was kinda lazy when it came to schoolwork. Probably the reason why I failed so often. It is not surprising. Naruto gazed questioningly back at him. As I have mentioned before, fate determines how we live and how we die. It was fate that you failed, and it was by a trick of fate that you became a ninja. Isn't that a bit pessimistic? Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I can't really believe that life is ordained for us simply because some metaphysical and grand entity thinks of us like game pieces in some mystical game. Your vocabulary is shocking for one of your lineage and makes me wonder about your mental clarity. Thank you. But that means nothing. Come on, Niji-han. Don't be such a party pooper. I am not a Niji. The two turned to find that the others had reached them. Lee was sporting a large bruise on his cheek, the perpetrator frowning imperiously as she hung behind the Uchiha Scion as if for protection. Sasuke himself was simply trying to ignore both of them, not wanting to be caught up in antics that would no doubt be a waste of time and energy. Tenten was smiling awkwardly, like she wasn't sure what to do next. Niji gathered himself up, not wanting to show any weakness. Naruto had caught him slightly off guard with his sudden philosophical attack, and he didn't want his image as the cool member of the branch family to be tarnished. What is it? Any listen, Tenten. Niji bit his tongue at Naruto's interruption. Of all the impertinent, Niji-han's going on and on about fate and how everything's set in stone. Can you believe that? Tenten shrugged non-committally. It's not completely wrong. Some things feel like they're supposed to happen, right? Naruto's eyes gained sparkles. Like my meeting with you? Tenten leaned back at the smaller boy's enthusiasm. Sakura stealthily, in her opinion, sidled up next to Sasuke. Sha. More like my bond to Sasuke-kun. HNN. Sasuke wanted to go now. Seeing the two's positioning, Lee raised a fist, crowing his rebuttal. Then I will break that stone called fate and carry it on my back for 5 years. And if I can't do that, then I will break the Hokage monument and carry that for 10 years. No, metaphorical and literal challenges made absolutely no difference to Lee when he entered hard work mode. Even if the very heavens swatted him down, he would jump right back up and give them the middle flames of passion. Yes, that's what he meant. Not such a dastardly and obscene gesture as what he was not thinking of. So what you're suggesting is to punch fate in the face? Of course. Anything can be accomplished with a steady heart and a strong will. So violence is the key to a happy life. Quiet. How could you say that, Naruto-kun? Violence is not the key to a productive lifestyle. You must throw away such notions if you want to stoke the flames of youth. But then when can I punch fate in the face? You can't punch anyone in the face, stupid. Quiet. But you do it all the time, Sakura-chan. Gah. See, you're doing it right now. I do it because you don't learn. I don't think an explosive seal to the head would make him learn how not to be a dope. Don't be so mean, Sasuke-kun. Now, Naruto-kun. I'm sure he was just being dash. I said quiet. They looked up quickly and backed away from the trembling Neji. His lips were pressed tight, one lip bleeding slightly from the tooth gnawing on it. His Byakugan was activated, the bulging veins surrounding his eyes lending to the irate expression that encircled his face. His skin was paler than usual, moving ever so slightly to the barely restrained rage that was trying to blare out its battle cry. His voice was ice on the sun, steaming and waiting for the backlash to come crying out. His words carefully selected so as to have full effect. This was a side of himself that he rarely let out, one whose defenses were tumbling because of these fools who refused to accept reality for what it was. Your beliefs are mistaken, you words empty. There is nothing that one can do to avoid the life that is given to them. You are simply born, live, and then die according to the will of the cosmos. Human beings are nothing more and nothing less. Attempting to strive beyond that is arrogant at best and blasphemous at worst. That's not right, Neji-san. Lee took the opportunity to stand up. There's nothing that can't be accomplished if you just try hard enough. After all, someone with as low as grades as me in the academy was able to garner the attention of someone as great as Gai-sensei. Neji turned to him, blank lavender eyes staring harshly. Lee, how many times have we seriously sparred? 57 times. My ex-eternal rival. A cruel sneer crossed Niji's beautiful features. And how many times have you won? Lee instantly deflated. A sheepish and ashamed look entered his eyes. 0. Niji nodded. Do you see? No matter how hard you try to exceed your limits, fate will always make certain that you are brought back to the cold earth. He turned to Naruto. The same holds true for you. You will always obey fate's decree, no matter how you struggle. Naruto was silent. Sasuke and Sakura watched in mute horror. They recognized the silence, but not the expression. Naruto always had a happy look or an intrigued look or an anxious look or a questioning look, which was the worst because then he insisted on experimenting with that which caused the look. But never before had he owned something that looked akin to pity. Naruto sighed deeply, raising his hands up in exasperation. Wow. I never thought that someone would be so caught up in their own fantasies that they would neglect to pay attention to their environment so thoroughly. Niji's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying, my dear Nijihan, that you have become so enamored with your chains that you have claimed them as your own invention and refused to release them. He took a step forward. Shame, really, but I guess we each have our own cross to bear, though you embellish yours to a frightening degree. How dare dash? But Naruto whipped a finger out, its tip a scant inch from Niji's nose. That just makes it so much more fun to clash with. He grinned widely, his canines ludicrously elongated and sharp. Allow me to smash those chains of your Niji-han. Niji blinked. Naruto was suddenly beneath him. Therapy. Riding on instinct, Niji tensed. Puinch. The remaining members of teams 7 and 9 stood, mouths agape at the scene. Niji was a couple meters away, having cleanly avoided Naruto's shocking but crude uppercut. Naruto was still smiling, swinging something lazily in his hand. Niji recognized the strip of metal and cloth and slapped a hand to his forehead. Gone was his Hittite, leaving his caged bird seal open to the world. His mind skipped in the changing of gears, coming to a screeching halt. That boy, that moron had revealed his greatest shame, his greatest weakness. And he was smiling. He was smiling so effortlessly and heartily. He opened his mouth to speak, but was cut off when Naruto did so first. "Issei," he started, twirling the headband on his pointer. The thing about fate is that it only applies to people who believe it applies. If you think you're going to fail, then you probably will fail. If you think you eventually will succeed, congratulations, there's probably going to be a success sometime in your future. And when someone assumes something's going to happen, they're probably the ones that's going to make it happen more than anyone else who has a hand in doing so. He frowned. Fate is tricky like that. She might say that you are destined, but that means nothing unless you actively try. Fate could say I'll hit a wall in my journeys, and in all likelihood I will because I've exhausted every other option. Heck, I might hit a wall simply because I want to hit that wall. The difference is what I do when it happens. Do I say screw it and turn back, find a way around it, or just smash my way through? Any of those options are viable, though in my case I'll probably choose the latter because I like blowing shit up even if it hurts me in the process. Naruto tossed the Hittite up and snatched it sideways on its trip back down. So, you see, fate doesn't run how I live my life. My life runs how my fate goes. In essence. At this, he winked and laughed. Fate is my bitch. He looked down at the apparel declaring the wearer a ninja of Konoha and shrugged. He passed it back to Niji, who caught it with a suspicious expression. So what do you say, Niji-han? How's about I let you out of that cage and let you spread your wings? Niji glanced at his headband, hope barely sprouting in his heart. What could you possibly do? He couldn't know. That fool couldn't know of the fate passed down in his bloodline. The curse given to all Hyuga who dared to be born outside the main family. You may not have realized this, but seals are my specialty. That little tattoo of yours that you're so shamefully hiding is within my realm of expertise. His hands froze. What was he saying? You can't possibly. Can't? Can't what? Help a friend out when he needs it. And even now the fool insisted he was a friend? What was going on within that bleached skull to make him assume such a thing? The Hyuga family's decades of tradition cannot be overthrown so easily. Tradition, my ass. Niji's head snapped up at this. So I make a few more enemies. Not like that's so uncommon for me. Niji said not a word. He looked down at his Hittite once more, that which shielded his pain, his failure. He looked up, at the shining, insane star that gleamed with energy. Was this the sun he had been seeking, that which was not shadowed by bars? Could he really make that step beyond fate to grasp what he desired? What do I have to do? Naruto smiled. He walked forward until he was standing right in front of Niji. Then he stuck out his tongue and flicked the taller boy in the head with his finger. Niji involuntarily flinched at the unfamiliar sensation. Barely a moment passed by before Naruto spoke again. Come back in a week's time. Oh, and bring a member of the main family you can trust. He smirked at the glare that had formed on Niji's brow. Trust me, it can't be done without that. He turned around and sauntered away. See ya then, Niji-han. When he reached the others, Sasuke grabbed him by the shoulder. What the hell was that, dope? What was with that manji tattoo on his forehead? Naruto put a finger to his lips. It's a secret amongst men, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke-kun's a total man, Naruto. Not yet, Sakura-chan, Naruto hummed, a mysterious and almost ancient look in his eyes. Not yet, but I'm sure you'll be the one to first find out when he is. Leaving a sputtering rosette behind, Naruto ambled away, humming a soft tune under his breath. And Neji watched, his headband loosely hanging from his hand. The day had passed, and the moon had begun its celestial tour. Neji lay in bed, thoughts wandering through his head. Could he really believe Uzumaki's words? Could he believe that the boy could possibly relieve him of his fate? He clenched his eyes, daring not to dream. And even if the possibility was true, who could he trust from the main family to help him? The caged bird seal was made for a reason, and it was in the main family's interest to keep such a seal active for as many generations as possible. His father had paid the price for that knowledge. Neji was not so eager to learn it himself. So who could? No, there was one person, but he was loath to resort to her. How often had he belittled her, claiming their fate of failure was the only path through life. And now he would come on hands and knees to shatter his entire hold over her? No, his pride demanded otherwise. Any of those options are viable, though in my case I'll probably choose the latter because I like blowing shit up even if it hurts me in the process. No, screw his pride, he had a chance and he would take it. Rising from his futon, Neji exited his room and made his way through the main family's mansion. Upon reaching the room, he hesitated for a moment before quickly and quietly rapping on the sliding door. There was a muted flurry of movement from within, and then the pattering of feet until the door slid open a crack. A mousy blue-annette with wide, doe-like eyes stared out, letting out a small eep when she realized who was at her door. "Eniji Nizan," she squeaked. "What can I do for you? It's so late. Is something wrong?" Neji swallowed the lump that had been growing in the back of his throat and shoved down the feelings of outrage in his chest. He squared his shoulders, clenched his jaw, and bowed lower than he ever had to the eldest princess of the Hyuga clan. "Hinata-sama, I beg a boon of you." The week passed by quickly and quietly. For the members of Team 7, maybe a bit too much so. Ever since the cryptic conversation behind Naruto and Neji, where the blonde had somehow managed to dumbfound the notoriously icy Hyuga, Naruto had been calm during their missions and training, doing everything exactly to the letter and managing to not blow up anything in the process. Even to Kakashi, who was pleased when he found the normally insufferable Jinchuriki to now be a servile and enjoyable subordinate, this was something that was cause for alarm. Hopefully it wouldn't end up with Naruto assaulting the Hyuga compound, though they wouldn't put it past him. When the two teams met up again, they found that Neji hadn't arrived yet. The air was of a somber nature, as while Team 7 did not understand the nature of Naruto's promise, Team Guy understood all too well and had no idea what to expect. Lee, being Lee, was anticipating the moment when he could prove to Neji that work did overcome the ambiguous existence of fate. Tenten, on the other hand, could only hope that Naruto could put his money where his mouth was, as she was a bit more insightful to the ramifications it would have on the Hyuga hierarchy. Naruto, though, would have no hand in lending to the solemn attitude permeating the surroundings. Grinning like a loon, he blasted through the atmosphere like a foghorn, nearly barreling the others over in the process. Anyway, he stomped a foot and snapped his fingers. "Since Neji isn't here to receive his present yet, I figured I'd give you two yours." Tenten looked at him oddly. Presents? What in the blazes was he talking about? Yup, he nodded. Presents. What, did you think I'd give Neji one and just ignore the two of you? That's just rude. So, he reached into one of the multitude of pockets in his duster and pulled out a bracer. It was made out of sleek steel the length of a forearm. On it were several buttons, switches, and a tiny LCD screen on the underside. The inside was coated with a thin layer of felt, though there seemed to be several thin, sharp-looking needles poking into the center like the spokes of a wheel. Naruto gave it the once-over and handed it to Lee. "Here you go, Lee-senpai. For you." Lee hesitantly took it. "It is indeed a wonderful gift, Naruto-kun. But what is it? Why? It's to help you with your ninjutsu. Lee's face drained of color, and he looked to the side. I am sorry to say this, but this device will be of no use to me. I have no capabilities for ninjutsu or jinjutsu, only the physical aspects of being a shinobi. He offered it back to Naruto. I'm afraid I must give this back. Oh no, Lee-senpai, Naruto simpered, his hands reaching out for Lee's. I insist. There was a blur of motion, a clack of metallic locks, and the discomfort of several pinpricks all around Lee's arm. Lee snapped his head down to see that the bracer had been secured on his right arm. He snapped it back up to see Naruto's leering face and was about to chide him severely for doing such a thing before he was stopped by a tinny, accented voice echoing from the bracer. Initialization commencing. Blood analysis start. Lee winced in pain as the pinpricks became more pronounced. The needles now lodged a good couple of centimeters in his arm. 23% complete. 57% complete. 82% complete. 100% complete. Blood sample analyzed. Designated DNA as Rock Lee. Imprinting, done. The needles receded, and the voice took on a richer, more baritone tone. Welcome to the flames of youth, Lee-sama. How may this one serve you? Naruto, what the hell was that? Sakura slowly leaned away, afraid that Lee's arm would soon spontaneously explode, and she would be showered by arm gore. Naruto glanced at her, teeth gleaming. Well, the only real problem with Lee-senpai is the flaw in his chakra production system. His pathways, for a lack of a better term, are congested. He can make the chakra, but he can't circulate it properly enough, so it stagnates and loses its potential for being used in jutsus. He turned to Lee. Am I wrong? Lee shook his head, eyes wide. But how did you? You'd be amazed what you can find when you sift through sealed files in the hospital and Shinobi Academy. Isn't that illegal? May be. But you're not going to tell anyone, right? As one, they all shook their heads. If Naruto had managed to sneak his way into protected areas without being caught, or, even worse, had been caught and then let go with no punishment, they didn't want to incur his wrath lest they lose the proper articulation to sneeze. No, it didn't make sense to them either, but when it came to Naruto, it was too entirely possible. Sue, what I did was bypass that system entirely. That bracer you're wearing. He pointed accusingly at the slightly humming apparel. Is more or less a substation for your chakra. It absorbs chakra by using your blood as a medium and then converts it into the desired jutsu through a series of seals. So far, I've only managed to make 2 due to the limited size of the machine and amount of chakra you actually produce, but it should be enough to help you immensely. He leaned forward and waggled his eyes. Wanna try? With a shaky, almost unbelieving nod, Lee granted his approval. Naruto smirked and said clearly, FY, activate henge, program M7. Voice print confirmed. As you wish, boss. With a shimmer of light and small haze of smoke, Lee's body suddenly gained a foot, 50 pounds, and a decade's worth of age. His bowl cut was replaced by a normal crop of bed hair brown. His muscles became more defined, his green outfit now a civilian's wear of cargo pants, boots, and jacket. His eyes became slits, his face squared, his nose smashed like it had been broken in many a bar fight. To all intents and purpose, there stood a construction worker where a youth-obsessed teenager had been. Naruto laughed at the shocked look on Tenten's and Lee's faces. It can only assume the forms that exist in its library, but I can always alter or add on if you give me the time to. Naruto-kun, this is... Lee jumped forward, crushing the now much tinier lad in a manly bear hug. This is truly wonderful. I feared I would forever be barred from any measure separate from taijutsu, but you have given me new hope. My flames of youth burn even stronger now. How could I possibly repay you? Naruto's muffled response made Lee loosen his grip. Naruto's head popped out from his chest. Please stop trying to shatter my spine. Of course, Lee barked and dropped the boy. Tenten bent down at his side as Lee ran into a battling rant about how the youthfulness of youth would always overcome those that tried to oppress it. You okay? She knew the boy was smart in respect to his own form of inventions, but this was something beyond anything she could possibly expect. Just who was Naruto Uzumaki? Yeah, he grunted. I'm good. I'd also tell him about the Bunshin feature, but I'm afraid he'd dogpile me with the clones and crush me into a coma. Tenten raised a thin eyebrow. Aren't they supposed to be incorporeal? Yeah. Naruto shook his head and took a deep breath, flinching at the soreness of his ribs. But I'm sure he'd find a way. Tenten's lips curled up. Really now? She chuckled lightly and tilted her head. Well, what about my present? She teased. Naruto stuck his tongue out. Greedy. Tenten slapped him on the shoulder. All right, don't hurt me. He reached into another pocket and pulled out a pair of fingerless gloves that reached up to the first knuckle. He slapped them into her hands. Here. She stared at them. They don't blow up, do they? Tenten. You wound me. He grabbed his chest where his heart was. She rewarded him with another swat. That's only half of the present. Here's the other half. Out of the same pocket, he pulled out 10 plain-looking daggers. Tenten took them and looked them over. They looked like any other kunai she had owned, though maybe a bit shinier and sharper than most. The only way to distinguish between them was the kanji for 1 through 10 engraved on each of their handles. Looking at the gloves, she also noticed there were corresponding letters stitched on each of the fingers. Finding nothing else, she raised an eyebrow at Naruto. He pouted. Ah, do I have to explain everything? She rolled her eyes. Fine. He pointed at the number carvings. See, each one has a small seal that connects a certain kunai to a certain finger. 10 kunai, 10 fingers. Thus I call them the 10-10 gloves. He had to fall to the floor to avoid the straight left jab to his nose. Okay, I'll be serious. He sighed and took a kunai, tapping it on its associated finger. The 2 seals glowed in resonance. I made a way to connect the 2 seals via chakra. When running chakra through the glove seal, it creates a sort of magnetic effect on the kunai seal and makes it gravitate back. I guess you could say it's sorta like a one-way kawarimi. He rubbed the back of his head. Tenten frowned slightly. She understood the basic gist of it. He had made a sort of homing jutsu that reacted only to a specific target. 1 to 1, 2 to 2, and so on. She glanced at the gloves and kunai, and then slid the left one on. Taking the kunai labeled 1, she threw it as far as she could. It landed amongst the treetops, out of her sight. She then focused back on her glove and ran chakra through her pinky, also labeled 1. There was a slight vibration, a burst of chakra, and the kunai materialized back in her palm, bleeding off excess chakra as it did. Tenten's eyes went blank at the implications given. She had an infinite supply of kunai as long as they didn't break or dull too much. She never had to worry about being weaponless again. This was... Tenten didn't quite recognize the bubbling sensation currently developing inside of her, but she knew it was attributed to the smiling blonde across from her. She knew it was a good feeling, though. You wonderful, ingenious, spectacular man, you. He laughed. I know. Hey, Naruto. The quasi-tender moment was broken when Sakura shouted at them, peeved that the boy would spend so much attention on a team that wasn't even his. If he had, maybe it wouldn't be so hard to resist smacking him whenever he did something wrong. Or cataclysmic. Why aren't we getting anything from you? Sasuke just watched, though he agreed with the assessment as well. If Naruto would only give him his inventions, his power would increase, and he would become that much closer to killing Itachi and restoring his clan's honor. Naruto shrugged. Well, they are a year ahead of us. They've already been on dangerous missions, so every little advantage helps. We haven't even had our first sea mission yet, so there's no real point in giving you guys anything. Do you really need an ultra condenser to pick weeds? His rational explanation brought their indignation to a stop. Besides, I'm not trying to date any of you. The feeling of constrained aggravation popped up behind him. He looked over to see a tick had formed in Tenten's right eye. So you're saying these are bribes? It wasn't a question. Naruto looked nonplussed. Would you prefer a gift of my fair and pure intentions? Tenten was still for a moment, and the tick died down. Actually, I'm impressed you're being so upfront. Maybe she should give him a chance. Good. 'Cause they were totally bribes. Ah, Niji-san. They all turned to find Niji finally arriving at the spot, a smaller girl quietly trailing after him. Lee ran to them, still in his hinged form, and greeted them robustly. Do you see, Niji-san? I have overcome my failings with the flames of youth. Niji glanced dismissively at the man. And you would be? Ah, my mistake. Of course you do not recognize me in this stature. Observe. He pressed a button on the bracer, obviously having learned enough about its functions to cancel the effect. His original form popped out of a cloud of smoke. It is I, Rock Lee, Konoha's beautiful green beast. The girl squeaked at Lee's appearance. Lee Kuin. She blushed profusely and tapped her fingertips together. Ignoring his babbling cousin, Niji glared straight at Lee. Who did this? His voice was soft. Why? It was my new eternal friend and rival, Naruto Kuinhei. Where are you going? Niji marched up to the sitting Naruto and stared down at him. The blonde just had an anticipating expression on his face. Was this really the boy to free him? Niji pursed his lips, closed his eyes, swallowed his pride again, and bowed to Naruto. Uzumaki, I ask that you fulfill your promise from a week ago. When nothing happened, he opened his eyes to find Naruto's face right in front of his. Resisting the urge to yelp in surprise, he stood up straight, betraying nothing. Naruto looked at him and stroked his cheek, biting on the thumb. All right, you're here. Time to begin. Niji also resisted the urge to sigh in relief as Naruto launched into his lecture. See, I've always been interested in seals. They're so much fun. All that writing and geometrics and explosions and variations and explosions and various uses of mediums and explosions and… Please, Niji ground out. Get to the point. Right? He grinned sheepishly. The point is that your little tattoo, he poked Niji in the forehead, with all its decades of tradition and strength and all that jazz, is one of the crudest seals I have ever seen. It's about as subtle as the explosive seals you see the shops sell. He paused and frowned. Crude, but effective. Naruto spun on his heels. It's as complicated as a hammer to the head, but when the result is the same, it doesn't need to be all that complex. Naruto made a sketch in the air in the shape of the manji. The process is simple. Seal is activated, brain starts sparking out signals, and your brain, eyes, and optic nerves undergo sudden apoptosis, programmed cell death. It's quite literally a suicide switch. He lowered his hand. And that's the problem. Naruto frowned and bit his lip. For all its crudeness, it makes sure of one thing. You try to remove it, it instinctively is set off and there's no way to stop the process. So, I'm sorry, but I can't get rid of it. Niji felt the weight of the world collapse on his shoulders. Then there was no way to escape his cage, no way to fly, no way to… But, Naruto grinned and flicked Niji in the forehead. That doesn't mean I can't alter the password needed to activate it. He turned to Hinata. And that's where your little family member comes in. She already has the password, the hand seal needed for activation. And I need it. Simply put, Naruto leaned in, eyes shining. Hinata leaned back, eyes trembling. I want you to activate the cursed seal. There was silence and then an explosion. What? Tenten yelled. You can't be serious. That's Dash. That's impossible, Naruto-kun. You can't possibly be insinuating that Hinata-chan chanced Niji's death all on her own. That is too much. I'm not even completely sure what's going on, Sakura added. But I can tell that is pretty much the stupidest idea possible. You want Niji to try and kill himself? Are you insane? Yes, Naruto answered plainly. But this isn't my choice and my future. It's Nijihan's. So the decision is up to him. He glanced sideways. So what's going to be, Nijihan? You want a little help to open that lock? Niji was silent, his face made of stone. He blinked slowly and turned. He gazed upon the tiny mouse he had tormented and he stepped off the ledge. Hinata-sama, if you'd please. She shook. Niji-Nizan, I can't do it. I can't just. Hinata-sama, please. His voice was coarse, gravelly and deep. I shall never ask of anything again, if you grant me this one respite. But I. Please. All right. Her hands alighted, her fingers bent, her tips touched. And Niji's world erupted in pain. Pain like he never felt. Pain like there never was. Pain that existed from eons ago and would last until the sun burned down to a husk. Niji was still. Light blossomed in his vision. He looked up to find Naruto angled over him. The blonde smiled. Is it over? Niji croaked. His throat the driest and cracked it had ever been. He must have been screaming loudly. Naruto grabbed his hand and dragged him up to a standing position. Naruto shook his head. Not yet, but almost. He lifted his hand, the palm outstretched. On it were 4 small straight lines, each at the corner of what could have been a square. The ink was still wet, glistening in the sunlight. Allow me to shatter that cage of yours called fate. Let's inject a little chaos into your life. Niji had no time to react as Naruto cocked his arm and launched it forward. Therapy. Punch. Mark. Tuwu. He connected. Niji hit the dirt. When he got up again, he noted that the others were staring at him. Again, specifically at his forehead. Grabbing a small mirror from his pack, Niji looked at his brow. Instead of the manji symbol, there was a square with a cross in the center. The added lines looked like they had been part of the seal since its creation. This was no longer the caged bird seal. It was something else entirely. Niji watched in disbelief as Naruto grinned. You see, I put a randomized shift on the password. Every 24 hours, a new combination of 8 hand seals will be needed to activate the seal. At 12 of the normal hand seals, plus 4 of my very own, the possibility of finding the right combo is. He counted on his fingers, mumbling softly to himself, and shook his head. Well, it's astronomical, to say the least. Niji was speechless. So what do you say, Nijihan? The sky all you ever wanted it to be. And all Niji did was nod. Naruto grinned. As the others encircled the Hyuga to talk with the stoic boy, he cackled madly in his head. Yes, the seed was planted, and it had been given a healthy dose of sun, water, and fertilizer. Now all he had to do was wait for it to grow into the spectacular blossom he surmised it would be. Something tinged in the back of his brain. An even greater grin spread across his face. Mayhaps the Hyuga was an even greater help than he initially thought. He looked at the semi-seal on his palm. Yes, that would do nicely indeed. Several more weeks went by, all of them with Naruto on his best behavior. It was driving Kakashi mad. Where was the mayhem, the carnage, the unilateral destruction of property? It wasn't what he was used to, and Kakashi did not do well when things were not going according to his vague, mysterious plans. Sure, the peace had caused his other students to relax considerably now that they didn't have to worry about bursting into flames at the tiniest notion, and had even fallen into the mistaken assumption that Naruto had worn himself out and was playing nice. But Kakashi knew. Kakashi knew the truth of the matter. The mad inventor was planning something hideous, even more frightful than what Guy and his pupil Lee had become ever since gaining that blasted metallic voice box. And Kakashi would not allow it. No, he would not allow it at all. He would get to the bottom of this enigma, even if it meant sacrificing part of his soul to the Shinigami to do so. The whistling of a falling object caught his attention. Something plowed a 2-foot divot in the ground near his feet. In it was a battered Naruto, his clothes singed and still smoldering ashes sprinkling off. Kakashi looked up to see a somewhat sheepish Sasuke, which by itself caused a minor mental meltdown. with his hands still caught in the final step of the Gokakyu Jutsu. Oh great, so someone had finally snapped. Now how was Kakashi going to deal with? Naruto's body exploded in a plume of smoke and chakra. Kakashi's eyes widened and immediately caught an identical signature, hiding in the bushes next to him. His hand snapped out and fished a squawking Naruto from within. But he knew this wasn't the real Naruto. The clone laughed awkwardly. Hi, Kakashi-sensei. It began as something deep within his gut but came crashing out with the force of a thunderclap. Naaru tutu. Naruto tilted his head. Welp. Looks like Kakashi-sensei finally figured it out. I put down the solder next to its creator's hands. The plan lasted 137 more hours than calculated. Perhaps Kakashi-sensei's nerves worked against him. He shrugged. Well, it's not like it matters now because Naruto took the solder and made one final adjustment to what he was working on. It's done. He examined his current masterpiece in his hands. A metal collar, as thick as his thumb, was covered in many complex and archaic arrays. It wasn't nearly as complicated as the one on his stomach, which Naruto based it off of, but he made up for it with multiple layers of seals by laying sealed strip upon sealed strip of metal. And now all it needed was the most important component. You ready, Kyuchi? At your command, Doctor. Kyubi's voice floated in his skull. He had managed to mentally connect with it, but this would make certain things so much easier. Right? He bit his thumb, tearing it so blood flowed freely. It began to glow an even darker crimson as Kyubi's chakra imbued it. Wiping it on the central array, he grinned. Kyubi Bunshin Kai. Something grew from within the collar. It started small but moved as though a curtain was being lifted. Scarlet locks tumbled from above. Long shapely legs arched from below. In a matter of moments, the humanified Kyubi was standing in his lab. Its eyes opened, revealing those ageless orbs of amber. Hello, Doctor. It rumbled, smoky tone rippling with power. It would appear that the experiment was a success. What do you plan to do next? Why, science, of course, my dear Kyuchi, Naruto said. Science of all kinds. He tracked his way through the darkened halls, eluding his pursuers with everlasting grace and aplomb. Did those insignificant peons believe that he could be captured so easily? No, he would make them work for it, for he was unto a god. No mere humans could understand the machinations of his mind. The only one who could even come close was that who unbound him from the shackles of mortality. And even then, they circled each other in a never-ending trial of cat and mouse. One hunting before the roles reversed and he became the hunted. Luminescent eyes peered through the darkness, already finding one of the fools that would dare to intrude on his domain. And it was barely a child, an awkward amalgamation of limbs and clothes that was as ungainly as it was unsightly. It whispered something into its earpiece, and he could already tell that it and the rest of its pack had mistakenly assumed that he was trapped. Such arrogance, such foolhardiness. Though they often clashed, he would never submit, and in the end, he would remain the one truly victorious over those that went against him. For he knew the true meaning of terror, that which came in jiggly mass and crushing anatomy, that which would try to squeeze the very life force out of him lest he escape its clutches every time he was brought back. And they were trying to reclaim him yet again. This would not stand. His ears perked up, his eyes shifted, and something came diving out of the supposed shadows, another of the young males, the one that was not his eternal adversary. The youth released a bola, iron chain whipping through the air. With barely a glance, he dodged under it, giving a contemptuous swipe at the foolhardy youth before springboarding off his head. The boy found his face planted straight into the ground from his ridiculously powered legs. He soon found the girl in front of him, a finely woven mesh iron net in his face. Quicker this time and with more effort, he slashed through that as well, the shock waves from his arm cleaving through the barrier of sound itself and blasting the ingrate of a child off her feet. And when she was down, he found his savior and destroyer, smirking in that intolerable fashion like he always did. So, it comes down to us once again. He barely nodded his head. The master grinned cheekily. It was smart of you, hiding in an enclosed space like this. We would be forced to react to your movements, while all you had to do was hide and wait to line us up, one by one. He cracked his hands. But now it's time. Hands flinging forward, glowing chains erupted from the boy's sleeves, spiraling towards him like those blasted serpents of yore. He knew he could not cut through them, and their maneuverability actually had an advantage in the narrow hallway. So there was only one choice: to jump right into the maw of the beast. He leapt through the teeth of steel, his agile feet finding easy purchase on the links, using them as a railway straight. He ran like a demon from hell, dodging each attempt to ensnare and popping out from the linked fence. And with a tumultuous swat, he slammed the boy into the wall. The master grinned as he slid down. Not bad, my adversary. Soon he was still. The now hunter raised his head in victory. Ha, now he was the master. No one would dare to clash swords with him now. Now he was free of... He bumped into one of the numerous wires that crisscrossed every inch of the hall around his fallen. Oh goddamn it. And there was light. Sarutobi grabbed the inkwell on his desk as it threatened to tip over from the quake that shook the Hokage's tower. His facial features remained unperturbed, as did those of the rest of the shinobi acting as bureaucrats for the daily mission debriefings. Irika scowled at the splotch of ink on the requisition form he was working on. Now he had to start all over again. He sighed and grabbed another one, taking care to see that none of his other papers were damaged. The usual? Irika leaned in his chair to glance out the window at his leader's question. There was a tall spout of flames and smoke from one of the abandoned buildings in the residential district. He could almost smell the usage of pyrotechnics and gunpowder, even though the window was shut tight. He sighed again and turned to Sarutobi. The same, Hokage-sama. Gather the necessary insurance forms and bring them to the appropriate departments. Very well. Irika stood and went on his way. Just another day in Konoha. Oh, my poor little Tora-chan. Mummy was so scared that you were all on your own. Sakura winced as Tora's eyes popped out of his skull from Lady Shijimi's bear hug. That poor, stupid animal. Naruto saluted the cat, tears streaming down his face. Good luck, my fellow ruler. Sasuke simply grimaced. As much as he hated the feline, he knew that no being in the world deserved such a fate. Had he not still had the scars from the last time they had been ordered to capture Tora, he would have killed the cat then and there to end its suffering. Kakashi made his usual smile. Team 7 has completed its weekly rundown on Tora, Sarutobi-sama, requesting a new mission for the day. Sarutobi clamped his teeth down on his pipe. Yes, well, allow me to scan through the current job offers and... There was a cry of pain as Shijimi dropped Tora, a long, puckered scratch on her pale arm. He took no time to run, dashing across the room and crashing his reinforced body through a just as reinforced glass window, yowling the cat's equivalent of freedom as he escaped. Tora-chan, no. Come back to Mummy. Shijimi ran out of the room, her bodyguards trailing quickly behind her. Sarutobi blinked. Seems a new mission has just opened up and dash. No! Kakashi's, Sasuke's, and Sakura's voices shouted out as one. Naruto pouted. Ah, but I like fighting Tora. I'll muck sewers, change diapers, even kill a god if you want, Sakura panted, her face a lovely mixture of livid red and ghastly white. But I will not go after that demon spawn again. She's right, Sasuke agreed. As much as it trains tracking and capturing skills, I would rather gouge out my eyes than chase after it twice in one day. Sarutobi fixed his gaze on Kakashi. The Kopinin shrugged. It cuts into my porn time too much. But... Shut up, Naruto. Sarutobi hid a smirk behind his clasped hands. He knew the overall effectiveness of Team 7. Knowledge of the squad that housed the former Jinchuriki and current Mad Inventor, at least in terms of threat, was commonplace within both the ninja and civilian ranks. Though they seemed like a ragtag team at first, There was some semblance of the camaraderie that Konoha boasted of. Sasuke, who had once been completely withdrawn from a society that idolized him, had shown a friendlier side, if his increasing mild lack of apathy and derision proved anything. Kakashi, the one that had before failed every one of his possible teams, now showed an almost older sibling relationship, in the way that older brothers want to strangle their younger siblings in their sleep, towards his students. Even Sakura, who, from the records, had been entirely focused on the Uchiha Dreamboat, now thought of both teammates' well-being, rather than only her crushes. Of course, he had no reason to doubt Naruto's role, as the blonde himself had been the one to periodically report on his team's dynamics from the get-go, so he guessed he could offer this one respite to them. The fact that his altruism, in actuality, had several ulterior motives meant nothing. "I suppose I can assign you another mission then. You have already completed the required amount of demissions, so I'll allow it." He fished a paper from the desk and waved it. "I have an AC rank to escort an individual back to his country of origin. A Genin team and Jonin instructor should be quite enough to fight off some minor bandits, if necessary." The entire room froze except for Naruto, who was still fuming over the fact that he couldn't go after Tora again. Sasuke was the first to open his mouth. "You mean a mission outside of Konoha? With people for Naruto to focus on? That's not us?" Sakura continued. Sarutobi tilted his head. "If you feel that you're not ready, I can always dash." "We're ready." Sarutobi turned to Kakashi. "Kakashi-sensei, what do you dash?" "They're ready." "Are you sure? Because dash." "They're ready." The secretary, Nins, boomed. Sarutobi rubbed his ear, the ringing sound refusing to leave. He should have known how the rest of the room would have reacted. "Let someone else deal with the reconstruction and hospital bills." He nodded at one of the SEC Nins. "Let him in, please." The double doors swung open, and in swayed an elderly and unkempt-looking man. An uncorked sake bottle was gripped loosely in his fingers, and his eyes had that bleary look that belied a man completely wasted off his ass. He squinted at Team 7 and sneered. "This is the team meant to protect me? They look like a bunch of brats barely off the nipple." He limply pointed a finger. "Especially the short one. He looks like a right idiot to me." He smirked. Boya? Your brain get bleached through your skull." He blinked when he saw the rest of the room tense. The blonde squad mates and teacher throwing dignity to the wind and diving for opposite ends of the room. Naruto kept his head down, his goggles hiding his eyes from view. "We're supposed to protect this man from dangers on the road, right?" Sarutobi internally groaned and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He knew he should have made the bridge builder sober up before coming in. "Yes, Naruto." "Which means that, as our Konoha's client, he's not paying to be protected from those that are native to Konoha or his hometown." "Yes." Naruto looked up. The innocuous grin on his face made Tazuna stop. It became toothier, and Tazuna began to sweat. Naruto pulled his hands out of his pockets, several bombs in each. "I love loopholes." "So you tried to blow him up?" Naruto crossed his arms at Tenten's bemused expression. "I made sure it was legally within the contract." The members of Team 7 and Guy were gathered in one of the training fields. Over the past couple months, they had all become casual acquaintances, as Team Guy being friends with Naruto had inevitably involved Sakura and Sasuke as well. At Naruto's urgings and absent-minded promises of fun, if they didn't agree, the six had become a common sight whenever they were all free after training and missions were done for the day. Sakura sighed as she bounced a fist off his head. Naruto squawked in indignation before shutting up at the look on her face. The Hokage had to deal with his ranting afterward, but he calmed down quickly enough after Sarutobi-sama offered a discount. Niji leaned back against the tree, activating his Byakugan to idly check out the other's chakra pathways. For some reason, he found Naruto's fascinating. Even if fate is no longer the true decider, fools are still fools no matter where they go. The man simply realized this and bowed in deference to one greater than him. He looked away, a superior smirk on his face. "Though I am sure the money helped in his decision." Naruto-kun, I am not sure what to think of your actions. Lee frowned. Though the man's words reeked of unyouthfulness, your response was not proper either. Sakura looked up when a realization hit her. Come to think of it, why did Sarutobi-sama let you off so easily? You just tried to assault one of Konoha's clients. The others looked at him as well. They had often wondered about the blonde's connection to the strongest shinobi in the village, as often portrayed by Naruto's informal way of talking to him and Sarutobi acting like an affectionate elder in turn, especially when punishment was in order. Naruto blinked. Jizan just loves me like that. Plus, I made him an auto-paperwork machine. He shrugged at their confused faces. He really hates paperwork. The idea of the man known as the god of shinobi hating the paperwork side of ruling so much that he granted leeway to an obviously insane person simply because said person made it easier was just too odd for them to consider, so they dropped it and moved on to the next subject. So, this is going to be your first sea mission, huh? Where is it? Wave Country, you said. Yep. We start first thing in the morning while the client rests. He leaned back at their stares. Don't look at me. He was completely drunk. They said he had to burn off all the alcohol before he even tried to make the long-distance trek. Tenten put down the kunai she was fidgeting with and sighed. Well, be careful. Sea missions are the first kind to involve people that aren't associated with Konoha, so they have no reason to assist and may even attack you. And I've heard some nasty rumors about that country. There's no need to worry, Sasuke snorted. Simple bandits and flighty rumors are nothing compared to me and the power of the Uchiha. Niji tilted his head. It is with thoughts like that that people find their heads stricken from their bodies. Sasuke glared back at his smile. They wouldn't even touch me. Besides. He nodded at Naruto, who had a glazed look on his face. The dobed probably blow them up before they even got near us. Naruto swung his head around. Sasuke-kun, you do care. Hearing the utter saccharine affection in the blonde's voice, reminding him all too much of someone else, he knew Sasuke had to hold back a sputter while he looked away to hide the way his eyes twitched. When he was sure it was gone, he gazed back at Naruto dismissively. That wasn't a compliment, dobe. He got up. I'm leaving. Sasuke-kun, wait. Sakura was soon after him. Naruto shrugged. Well, guess I better get going too. Bye. He was gone within a few moments, leaving Team Guy all to themselves. Tenten was quiet for a moment and turned to her teammates. How do you think it's going to turn out? Niji smirked. I give it a week before their client is dead and his village burned to the ground. Ooh, Lee cried. I believe that they will protect their client and finish the job with flying colors. I would expect no less from my eternal rival. I believe the same, Lee-sama. The odds are at 87.53% chance of completion with a margin of error of +2.65 at their current level and mission difficulty. Tenten pursed her lips. She looked at her gloves. The leather was lovingly maintained, as were the kunai partnered with them. It was a good gift, and she treasured it as a good friend would. Naruto was amazing, to be sure, but still she did worry. Naruto may have his Kinzoku Jutsu, but there were still so many unknown variables during a mission. They couldn't afford to be lax. Well. She stood and stretched out the kinks in her arms and neck. Things would go all right for them. Probably. Sakura checked over her pack one more time. Kunai, check. Trail rations, check. Extra clothes, check. Mini first aid. Kit. Toiletries. She blushed. She had already reached that point in a girl's life where Mother Nature pulled her monthly visit. It would be embarrassing enough if she was just a civilian, but as a shinobi, being indisposed for an indeterminate amount of time could prove lethal. They had gone over the perils of being a kunoichi in Ninja Academy, and it was something that her parents had argued over profusely, but she wasn't going to give up that easily. How would Sasuke think of her then? She blushed. Sasuke, why didn't she realize that? He would see her biological weakness and he would. Wow. Girls have it pretty tough, huh? Sakura stopped. Creakily. She turned around to face the familiar voice. Naruto was perched on her windowsill like a bird of prey, his head tilted, eyes pitying. She looked down at the packet of sanitary napkins in her hands. Then she looked up. Then she blushed. Then she punched Naruto, right in the face. What the hell are you doing here? His eyes went blank before he tottered backwards and fell off the windowsill. Sakura blinked. Her room was on the second floor. He had just fallen out of a second-floor window after a head injury, caused by her, on the day of their first sea mission, which was, in a sense, only happening because of him. She slowly crept up to the window and looked down. All she could see was a twitching leg poking out of a bush. She grimaced. Oh dear. The leg puffed into smoke. Almost on instinct, she whirled around. Quick on your feet, ain't cha? Naruto was sitting on her bed. He scratched his nose. Post-synchronization is a hella effect. Feels like my sinuses are flaring up. He cocked his head. Got any allergy medication? The tick that had recently exhibited itself in her cheek in the last month flared up. Sakura looked at the napkins still in her hands, blushed again, and hid them behind her back. She snapped her attention back to Naruto, who was fidgeting with one of her paperweights, a frog-shaped one. What are you doing in my room? She asked cordially, swiping it from his hands and replacing it on her desk. He shrugged. Thought I'd pick you up. Twitch. And you couldn't come in through the front door like a normal person? He stared at her like she was the one who had a few screws loose. Who wants to be a normal person? She stopped herself. No, her room wasn't the place for a murder scene. It was better if it were a dark alley, with lots of dumpsters to cover the smell. Besides, she didn't know how he'd retaliate. She doubted her parents would be happy with the second floor of their home blown off. Why, that's very kind of you, Naruto-san. But I'm afraid that dash. And I thought that we'd swing by to pick up Sasuke-kun as well. The words died on her lips. Pick up Sasuke? Yeah, he nodded fiercely. Thought we'd all walk together to the meeting point, like a team. But how do you know where Sasuke-kun lives? As far as she knew, after the Uchiha massacre had occurred, the Uchiha compound was sealed off and Sasuke had moved to one of the more opulent apartment buildings. Which one? She didn't know, unfortunately. Wait, how did you know where I live? Easy, he said. I followed both of you home without you knowing. You stalked us? I prefer tactical surveillance. Sakura bit her lip. No, don't hurt the boy. He might forget where Sasuke lived. Sha. Then we wait for him to take him there. Then kill him. Right, that was a much more sound idea. As her inner side contemplated the pros and cons of various killing methods, Sakura smiled as sweetly as her namesake. Okay, Naruto. Let me just finish packing and we can go. Okay, he cried. He sat there, looking at her with all the feigned innocence in the world. Sakura pointed at the window. Out. Okay. Naruto scowled. No need to get so uppity. Geez. Sakura clenched her fist. It was all for Sasuke. All for Sasuke. Sakura gaped at the awe-inspiring visage of the complex in front of her. It had taken several levels of security to even get into the building. At least it would have taken several levels if Naruto hadn't suddenly grabbed her and used his rocket boots to jet up the complex's wall to the 5th floor. Now she was gaping merely from the feeling of nausea and asphyxiation due to the onslaught of vertigo and screaming. Naruto punched the air in a shadow box. All right. Forward. Sakura grit her teeth and repeated her mantra. All for Sasuke-kun. All for Sasuke-kun. All for Sasuke-kun. She followed Naruto as he ambled down the hall. He stopped at the number 505 and began to rapid-fire the doorbell. Sasuke-kun, come out and play. There was a swift thumping of feet as someone ran to the door and yanked it open. Sasuke was staring wide-eyed at them, his hair a mess and his clothes disheveled. What the hell are you doing here, Dobe? He whispered harshly. Naruto tilted his head. Why, to pick you up, of course. Sakura smiled coyly. Good morning, Sasuke-kun. Whoa, bedhead Sasuke. I can die happily. His eyes roving side to side wildly, Sasuke grimaced and nodded. Yeah. Okay, whatever. He leaned down to grab his pack by the door. Let's just get out of here before dash. Sachan, you forgot your bento, Sachan. Damn it. Behind him appeared a beautiful woman in her late 20s with raven black hair. She was clad in a frilly apron with a chick in the center, holding a bento in a checkered handkerchief. She stopped. Era? Sachan, you brought friends. Her angelic face had a confused and naive look to it, making her even cuter. Sakura shakily pointed a finger at the woman. Sasuke-kun. Who's that? Sasuke's normally apathetic face fell into one of deep and total despair. His mumbled reply was barely heard. My mother. Hi, Mikoto Nichin. Era, Nachan? Is that you? Her mouth went wide. It is you, Nachan. She bounded forward, Sasuke slinking out of the way, and engulfed Naruto in a hug. His face shoved right into her not-so-insignificant bosom. Mikoto hasn't seen you for a while. Have you come to pick Sachan up? He mumbled a reply through her boobs that she apparently understood, because her face lit up. That's wonderful. She turned to Sakura. Era? Who are you? Trying to get her brain to reboot, Sakura robotically introduced herself. I'm Sasuke-kun's other teammate, Sakura Haruno. Mikoto's mouth went into a giddy smile, her cheeks blazing up. She clasped her hands to the side. Sachan has even more friends? Mikoto is so happy. She dropped Naruto, who was twitching considerably from the total lack of oxygen, and swept Sakura up into her own marshmallow hell. And you're so cute. Sachan is such a lucky boy to have such cute friends. Sasuke sighed miserably. How could he be all dark and broody if his mother insisted on being so happy-go-lucky? This was one of the reasons why having Naruto on his team was so annoying. He wanted to have some time away from the insane happiness. Mother, will you please let her go? She can't breathe. Mikoto released Sakura, who immediately started inhaling large quantities of air. She turned to Sasuke. Moo, Sachan. Mikoto just wanted to greet your other teammate. If Nachan didn't tell me what you did, Mikoto wouldn't know anything at all. That doesn't mean you can suffocate her. Sachan. Sakura coughed and pushed back from the railing she was leaning on. How? But what? Naruto shrugged. Remember when I said I followed Sasuke-kun home? Mikoto Nichin found me lurking in the bushes, and when she found out I was one of his teammates, she invited me up for tea. He grinned. We kinda hit it off. He leaned forward and whispered conspiratorially. For being the former best Kenjutsu experts in Konoha, she's really just a sweetheart once you get to know her. Sakura looked to where Sasuke and Mikoto were talking. Well, actually, it looked more like Sasuke was lecturing his mother while she acted like a petulant child. She was even windmilling her arms in circles to accentuate her point, eyes closed shut and tears poking out. But she looks so young. Mikoto stopped immediately at that statement. Turning around, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears. And beaming a world-class smile, she grabbed Sakura's hands in her own. You really mean that? Sakura nodded uncertainly. Mikoto is so happy. What should Mikoto do for you, Sakachan? Mikoto'll do anything. How about a cookie? Naruto gave a thumbs up with his tongue out and one eye shut. Mikoto Nichin's cookies are the best. Mikoto put a finger to her lips. But there are no cookies now. Then make them. Sachan, make her some cookies, Sasuke said, his tone curiously kind. Don't worry, we'll wait. Okay, just wait. Mikoto'll be back with some fresh cookies. With that, the Uchiha matriarch skipped whimsically into the apartment. As soon as she closed the door, Sasuke faced the two. Run. Sasuke-kun, what are you? Too late. Sasuke had not only run off, but off the 5th floor entirely, using chakra to dash down the side of the complex at breakneck speeds. Naruto leaned over the railing. That was totally badass. He put a hand on the railing. Hey, Sasuke-kun, wait for me. And then he was gone too. Sakura fretted for a moment and then shrugged. Oh, what the hell? And over the brink she went. Surprisingly, Kakashi was at the correct meeting point on time. Had anyone bothered to ask him why, he would have said that the sooner they were out of Konoha, the sooner he could point Naruto at people who weren't them and watch the fireworks. And the reason none of them asked was because both Sasuke and Sakura were thinking the exact same thing. See, insanity does bring people closer together. Tazuna had backed away the moment Naruto showed up and put the Jonin between the two. But Naruto would have none of that and walked straight up to the man, smiling in a friendly manner. Suddenly, he stopped a respectable 2 feet from the man and bowed deeply. I am sorry about our initial meeting, Tazuna-sama, Naruto said formally. It was wrong of me to attempt such a thing against an honored client of Konoha. Please let it be known that this one will do all he can to make sure that you are received by your friends and family safe and sound. He extended a hand. Tazuna looked at it as though it may bite him, but clasped it sturdily. Thank you, boy. I appreciate it. He leaned forward a bit when Naruto tugged on his hand slightly, overbalancing him. When Tazuna was close enough, Naruto stood on his toes and whispered, After all, I can wait until after we reach wave. Then, with the most brilliant grin Tazuna had ever seen, he released his hand and walked merrily to his teammates. Tazuna just stood there, his face ashen. Just what the hell had he gotten himself into? And why were they letting such an obviously unstable child in the ninja corps? Was their leader absolutely mad? He jumped when a hand laid itself on his shoulder. Kakashi smiled under his mask when Tazuna twisted his head. Don't worry. As a Jonin, I should be able to stop young Naruto should he try anything. He closed his visible eye and retrieved his hand. Probably. He took a step and said, almost as an afterthought, Oh, and anyone who tries to attack us too. Tazuna felt his bowels loosen considerably. However, several hours of traveling later and the blonde hadn't tried anything at all. He simply amused himself by babbling at his teammates, the Rosette the one to answer most often, usually in exasperated tones, and the black-haired boy inserting a non-committal sentence or noise every so often. Kakashi simply walked with his nose buried in a copy of Ika Ika, perverse giggles coming from him at times. After a while, Sakura turned to Tazuna. Tazuna-san, you're from the land of waves, right? Huh. The elderly bridge builder shook himself out of his paranoia-driven semi-coma. Yes, that's right. Why? She turned to Kakashi. Sensei, does Wave have ninja? Kakashi shrugged. No, not really. You see, each country has dash. Who? Random exposition on the geopolitical structure of shinobi within the elemental countries. Kakashi turned to Naruto and began walking backwards, his mask indicating a frown. Are you quite done yet? What? He whined. I'm always excited to hear about information that should be common sense to anyone that's involved enough in the subject matter. He shook his leg after stepping over a puddle. Gah, stupid rocks. Sasuke snorted. He's right. That'd be the same thing as one of us not knowing what chakra is. Sakura nodded. I think so, too. I just wanted to know if Wave had a ninja village since its population density is fairly small. I know enough about geography and the economy to realize how ninja society within the citizenship works. I was top of my class, you know? Kakashi said nothing and scratched his head. And here he was going to give a lecture that made him sound all intelligent and have his little genin looking up to him with worshipful eyes like good boys and girls should. Yeah, well, Kakashi gestured lamely. Yeah. No, there are no wave ninja. Really? Yep. An explosion went off behind them, wind whipping all around. They turned to see 2 somewhat charred bodies smack the ground simultaneously, their once proudly shown Hittite-ites shredded to their composite metal and cloth. Well, maybe not. The 2 Nins stood up shakily. They'd thought they had the element of surprise, especially when none of the Konoha Nin had noticed the puddle and walked right on by. But then there was this small orb that had rolled to their hiding spot and then it had exploded and they had seen what a pretty color the sky was and now did their backs hurt. Sakura frowned. Those are ninja, right? Yup, they're ninja, Sasuke concurred. Oh hey, you guys found my bomb. Thanks. Tazuna wondered what the hell was wrong with these children. These were real ninja. They had dark clothes and air masks and a really long, sharp-looking chain that could rend flesh from bone just as easily as one could cut silk. So why were they just standing there like it was nothing to be bothered by? Apparently the twin Nin thought this as well and, wanting to correct such a mistaken assumption, both leapt forward at the admitted source of the explosion, Naruto. In the blink of an eye, they wrapped the serrated chain that linked the two around Naruto several times and pulled tight. Naruto was ripped to shreds, his body parts, flesh and blood littering the trail like discarded pieces of trash. The demon brothers turned to the other genin, seeing them as the next easiest target. They intoned as one, their masks creating an eerie reverberation effect. One little piggy. The Konoha Nin did not look impressed. Please, Sakura scoffed. If he was that easy to kill, we would have done so a long time ago. Yar, you're really not earning any brownie points here, guys. Kakashi scratched his head, completely unbothered by the apparent murder of his student. Sasuke just pointed. Behind you. Peek-a-boo. They could feel the breath behind their ears, a glimmer of light on enlarged canines. Let me show you how a chain is really used. Something coiled around each of their waists, cool and undulating. Then their worlds reversed as they were flung into the air. Hey guys, catch! Naruto unwound the Hibikusari from them and launched the two at his teammates. In the air, the brothers oriented themselves so that they were better prepared. They unlatched the chain connecting their gauntlets, knowing it would only deter them, ready to do battle with the foolish little genin that dared to face them. Each were met by something that couldn't possibly be a genin. Sakura had taken her brawler style to heart. With a resounding battle cry, she threw a powerful haymaker at the younger demon brother's face. He batted it aside with his heavier gauntlet, throwing Sakura off balance and retaliating with his own jab. Sakura took the momentum from the spin and cracked a backwards elbow to the nin's face. She yelped in pain as it connected with the mask and hit the ground in a tumble. The younger brother advanced on her, once again throwing a jab with the sharpened tips of his iron glove. She blocked with a kunai, sliding the gauntlet off to the side, and tried for another elbow strike. This one connected properly at the base of his skull and sent him skidding. Sasuke was doing just as well, if not better. Against the larger, heavier opponent, he would have figured he'd have an advantage in speed but disadvantage in power, but when he gave a palm strike to the older nin's chest, he found the man flung backwards much further than anticipated. He smirked. This was power. This was what he wanted. He wanted more. Sasuke drove the man back, little by little until he was back to back with his brother. Then, catching the look on Sakura's face paired with the high-pitched cackle from above that was quickly growing louder, he dived to the side. Kinten. Inazuma Ami. The net was set and thousands of volts of electricity seared through the brothers. They collapsed in a smoking heap. Kakashi coughed as he nudged them with his foot. Nodding, he turned to his students. Not bad. These guys were of the Chunin level, notorious for their perseverance to always kill their target. Sakura smiled at the praise, Sasuke hned, and Naruto gave a loud, long squee. Wait, was that about killing me? It was a joke, I swear. Kakashi turned to Tazuna. Of course, now the question is why they, shinobi of Kirigakure, attacked us, shinobi of Konohagakure. I'm pretty sure we aren't on that bad of terms. Kakashi took a step forward, and the older man swallowed hard. So the only thing that comes to mind is that you were the intended target. Tazuna glanced between the Konoha Nin. I can explain? Kakashi sighed. Tazuna-san, I think we need to have a talk. So, what you're saying is that you lied to us because you couldn't afford the obviously much higher-priced emission since some evil businessman named Gatu is trying to take over your extremely destitute country, and the bridge you're building is the only way to stop him, so that makes you a high-value target. Oh, and you're emotionally blackmailing us with your daughter and grandkid. Wow. Thanks for reiterating his entire story, Kakashi-sensei. Okay, you know what? Here I was trying to break it down just to make it easier on those who weren't listening and you backsass me. How about this then? The second we get home, I'll have Guy give his lecture on the flames of youth with charts and diagrams and pictures. I'll be good. Naruto scratched his head, ignoring the tongue-lashing Kakashi was giving to the others. Huh, you're kind of an asshole, aren't ya, Tazuna-sama? What are you? I mean, you obviously expected some highly trained individuals, and yet when you saw us, who were only hired because this was a low-grade mission, you just went right along with it knowing perfectly well that there was a high chance of us getting killed. And now you're trying to make it seem like you're the victim. Well, if you put it that way, I like you. Traumatizing our asshole client aside, this is a slight problem. Kakashi tapped his book on his hip. I serious. Considering the physical training I've given you thus far, I have no doubt we could take out any small fry mercenaries this Gatu can hire. Against trained ninja like our friends over there. He pointed at the demon brothers who were now conscious again and tied to a tree. Not so much. I can handle myself easily, but I can't exactly protect our client if I'm busy the entire time protecting you three. He tapped the book again. Although you did do surprisingly well against our guests. Naruto blew them up before they even appeared. Sakura scoffed haughtily. How could we take them seriously after that? Told you. Yes, well, Kakashi smirked. Fighting against Nins that are caught off guard and injured before the battle even begins is one thing. Up against Nins that are fully prepared and fresh? Another entirely. He raised the book to his head. So the question is, should we continue on ahead knowing full well we could come up against ninja that are much better than us? Or turn back and leave our client to his somewhat deserved fate, promised cursing aside? Sasuke snorted. Even if they're better than these guys, I'll still take them out. Not wanting to go against Sasuke and emboldened by the smashing success of her first actual fight, Sakura nodded as well. I want to go too. We can't just let Gata do what he wants. Of course we're going. How else am I going to get live fire testing on my jutsu? Right, that clinched it. Crazy Naruto pointing his jutsu at the enemy for a reason meant that he was not pointing it at them when he was bored. As the group forged on ahead, Naruto stopped mid-step. Sorry guys, I forgot something. I'll catch up to you in a bit. Kakashi shrugged. And let the blonde do whatever he wanted. If he said he forgot something, and none of them would argue otherwise. The happier he was, the less injured they were. In theory. Sure. But hurry up. Naruto saluted the man and walked back. When he saw the rest of his team and their client was out of earshot, he smiled and then hunkered down in front of the tied demon brothers. He waved happily. Hi guys. Sorry about blowing you up, but my teammates needed a boost, especially the Pinky, you know how girls are, and I figured the best way was for them to win a fight on their own, but since you guys look pretty tough, I needed to soften you up, and that's why I dropped the bomb, and it was pretty obvious you were in that puddle because come on, it hasn't rained in a few days, and why would there be a puddle exactly where we were walking and nowhere else, and I've forgotten where I'm going with this. He took a deep breath and frowned. Then his eyes lit with recognition. Oh, right? So, I'm gonna be borrowing these. He unlatched the air masks from them, revealing two rather ordinary-looking faces. No wonder you guys wear them. Oh, and these and this. He raised into view their poisoned gauntlets and serrated chain. I can probably make them better, so I'll return them when I'm done. He tilted his head, closed his eyes and grinned. Thanks. He stood up, took a step back, and stared at them oddly. The two began to sweat. They had been taken for a ride by this insane little individual, completely and utterly thrown off their game. They were supposed to be Gozu and Meizu, the demon brothers, Scourge Nuke of Kiri, and the boy blew them up because he was trying to make his teammates look better, and now he was staring at them like he was considering how to cook them up, and oh god, they never should have followed Zabuza, and why was this kid so damn scary, and how could— Oops. Naruto raised a foot off the ground. His knee bent, using the worst stilted, obvious, and camp stage voice ever. I seem to have dropped this kunai here within a difficult but not impossible to reach distance. Whatever shall I do? I am sure it will not matter. After all, I am sure that these two ninja could not possibly get it. He pointed at the kunai next to his feet. Wink wink. Then he was gone, running as fast as his stubby legs could carry him, screaming for the others to wait up. Meizu and Gozu looked at each other. They looked at the kunai. They looked at each other again. There was no possible way it was as easy as this. No way the kid would make such an obvious ploy to engender their escape. It had to be a trap, probably some detonation that would be triggered when they got hold of the kunai. But then there was the fact that the kid was clearly bonkers. Maybe he wanted them to get out so that they would fly back in a vengeful rage and he could serve their defeats up to his teammates again. Or maybe he was actually serious about wanting to return their tools back to them. Or maybe just because. On the other hand, it could just be an elaborate hoax to make them think he was crazy so that they would grab it and be reduced to their base compounds. But maybe this was a reverse scheme to make them. It was 3 days later and on the verge of starvation when they finally decided what to do. Hey guys, ambushed people say what? What? Get down. Haha, told Naruto's laugh was cut off when the human-length Zanbatsu crashed into him. Luckily deflected off his chakra-enforced Hibi Kasari-wrapped arms, instead only causing him to fly backwards and crash into a tree, smacking the ground in a boneless thump. Naruto! Sakura's shocked voice echoed over his limp form. Sasuke was just as surprised. One moment the dobe was cracking some moronic joke and the next he was on the ground, not moving. Kakashi gritted his teeth. Damn it, Naruto! He swung his attention back to the topless man standing on the tree branch from where he had launched his oversized sword. The others could take care of Naruto. Right now he had to focus on this man. The Zanbatsu Wasa clear giveaway to his identity, but the cruel eyebrowless face that accompanied it sealed it. Kakashi gave a half nod, refusing to show significant vulnerabilities. Well, it's an honor to meet you, Zabuza Momochi. The demon of the mist's eyes crinkled in sadistic delight. His feast was laid before him, and he would partake in it with great relish. As for me, Sharingan Kakashi. Naruto, wake up. Naruto. Sakura shook the blonde's body, trying to elicit a response. Any kind of response. Naruto just shook with her movements, giving nothing else. Damn it, Naruto. Wake up, damn you. Sasuke bit his lip. The dobe couldn't go down that easily. If he did, then what was the point of even training with him for this long? Cursed dobe, he couldn't die. Naru dash. She froze when a weak cough came from the boy. Naruto? Ugh. Dang. Naruto rolled over and painfully sat up, supported in part by Sakura. Can't say that didn't hurt. 100 pounds of chakra-tempered steel hitting at 60 mph is pretty effective. He coughed again. You idiot. Sakura punched his shoulder, but her heart just wasn't into it. What the hell were you thinking? That I wasn't expecting to get hit by a flying sword? Sasuke sighed, swallowing the relief that had been in his eyes. Dobe! Now that the moment of panic had passed, their attention was inevitably drawn back to the rising tension between their teacher and their attacker. Kakashi had one hand on his Hittite, prepared to draw it back. Zabuza had already retrieved his Kubikiri Hocho after its aerial arc from Naruto's arm guards. Zabuza smiled under his mask. I'll ask one more time, Sharingan Kakashi. Will you not give the old man to me? Sasuke paused. Sharingan Kakashi? But only the Uchiha had right to that bloodline. Why would their teacher of all people be named after the greatest of his clan's techniques? Kakashi shrugged. Sorry, but despite the old man being a miserly and annoying liar, he's still our client. So I'm afraid that's out of the question. Zabuza shifted his hold on his sword, his guard relaxing to the untrained eye. To Kakashi's, he was instead preparing for a quicker draw when it came down to it. They were not going to get out of this without a fight. Zabuza's eyes narrowed. I've heard of you, Nin Kakashi. When I was in the employ of Kiri's ANBU, I had access to all the bingo books of our rival countries. He bent his knees slightly. There was you, a genius. A man who's known to have copied over 1,000 of his opponent's jutsus and then used them against them. This only deepened Sasuke's suspicions. The instant Zabuza had mentioned copying techniques, Sasuke knew something was up. But how come he had never seen this before? He had thought that Kakashi's moniker of the Copy Nin was just something he had come up with to scare his opponents. Sakura was thinking along the same wavelength. She just thought the Jounin was a perverted adult who enjoyed torturing them with insane training and had developed a slight paranoid side since Naruto started to really act up. But he was actually an awesome kind of person? Tazuna began to hope for the first time that maybe, just maybe, he would survive long enough to see his family and complete his bridge. Naruto only smiled. Zabuza shrugged. But time for pleasantries is over. I have a job to kill the geezer, and my client isn't a very patient man. If he complains anymore, I might be forced to cancel our contract. The lines of a perverse leer pushed out of his mask. So I just guess I'll have to kill you all. Starting with you, Kakashi. With a burst of chakra, he disappeared from the branch and reappeared standing on the surface of the nearby lake. With one hand outstretched to the heaven, and the other near his face, both in the ram sign, Zabuza leered. Allow me to show you the greatest and most terrifying of my jutsus, Kirigakure. The last word was almost hissed, and he vanished completely from sight. Kakashi grimaced. His hand moved, revealing the pinwheel iris of the Sharingan. Sasuke bit his lips to avoid gasping. Kakashi didn't take notice. Move into diamond formation around the client, he said sternly, his tone taking on a new level of authority. Zabuza is a master of Kirigakure's specialty, the art of silent killing. He'll try to catch us unawares by coming out of nowhere, so remain calm. And make as little noise as possible. The students did so without hesitation. Slowly, fog snaked its way around them. There was no reason, no wind, nothing to proclaim its coming. They refrained from jumping when Zabuza's voice, now distorted to the point it was almost unrecognizable, emanated from all around them. There are 8 targets: throat, spinal column, lungs, liver, the jugular vein, the subclavian artery, kidney, heart. So many choices. His voice rasped sinfully. What shall I choose first? The team made no sound, no movement. Naruto slowly, carefully pulled down his goggles and flicked a switch. The world filtered out from the drab gray of the fog to dark shades of blue and indigo, interspersed with brighter colors of green, yellow, orange, and red where the others were. There was no change. It hit them. An overwhelming feeling of hate, despair, outrage, and apathy. It wanted to consume them, rip them to pieces, and trod on the remains. Sasuke felt his throat clench up with irresistible fear. This was not like the fight with the demon brothers. This was a whole new thing altogether. With the nuke Chunin, all he had felt was the rush of adrenaline and unwary attitude of one fighting something that was already defeated. But this begged nothing like that. It only ordered, commanded that he lay down like the dog he was and wait for the sweet embrace of death to come. No, not even that. There was no waiting for death, he would want to come to it. All it would take was a sharp turn of the kunai and… Sasuke! He broke out at Kakashi's bark. He turned with Sakura and Tazuna, who had the same look on their faces as he assumed he did. Kakashi smiled gently. Don't worry, I will not allow my comrades to die. Ha! You think I'd let him take my minions, either? Naruto added for good measure. Somehow, that calmed him down more than he thought it would, which was troubling in a much different fashion. Oh, I wouldn't believe that just yet. Something whisked right into the middle of their formation. It broke apart, members diving every which way to avoid the whirling blade in the center. When they glanced back, Kakashi was behind Zabuza with a kunai in the nuke Nin's gut. Then another Zabuza appeared behind Kakashi, swinging his Zanbatsu in a wide batter's arc. It cleaved through Kakashi like butter, the man bursting into a crash of water. Zabuza's eyes widened. The Jounin had copied his water clone within the mist. He felt something sharp on his jugular, and could tell who it was that held the blade. He chuckled. "You're quick-witted. That whole speech was just a way to buy time to make your own clone." Kakashi pressed the kunai a little closer. "I thought it was smart." Naruto's eyes narrowed. There was something wrong here. Zabuza wasn't emitting nearly enough heat for a man of his size. In fact, it looked like the only heat that was on him at all was the side nearest to Kakashi. But that meant a flash of red coming from the rear. "Kakashi-sensei, it's fake. Behind you!" Kakashi twisted his body just in time to parry the blade headed for his skull. His hand snapped back from the impact, leaving his chest wide open. Zabuza took the chance to kick the man in the chest, rocketing Kakashi off his feet. "You're good, Kakashi, but I'm still better," Zabuza crowed. He jumped from his position and brought the Zanbatsu on Kakashi broadside, sending him flying into the lake. The Jounin surfaced quickly but felt his movements limited. The water was heavy and clung to him. His head snapped up as Zabuza appeared above him. "Too bad for you, but now you're in my trap." He flattened out his hand, the water crawling into the air to connect to it. Suru no jutsu. The water filled out into a sphere, imprisoning Kakashi inside. "It's really a shame, Kakashi. Here I thought this would be a simple smash and bash mission, and you have to go and make me work my ass off to nail one pathetic old man." He looked at the shore. "And that doesn't work for me. So while you cool off, I'll take the time to play with each of your precious students and then collect your client." His eyes crinkled again in that sadistic glee. His hand twitched inside the water orb. "I can't wait." His free hand made another hand sign. "Mizu Bunshin." Something crawled out from the lake. Amorphous, jelly-like, it slowly took the form of a man, and then a perfect replica of Zabuza. He smiled. "Hello, brats." Kakashi took the chance to yell. "Everyone, take Tazuna-san and run. You can't beat this man. He's a Jounin, the same level as me." He couldn't believe this. No matter how crazy Naruto was, how powerful his inventions were, it couldn't measure against a man who slaughtered an entire graduating class of genin at the age of 6. And Sakura and Sasuke had even lower odds. He can't leave without canceling the Suru, and his clone can only get so far before falling apart. So get out of his range. I'll be fine. Naruto simply snickered. "Oh please, Kakashi-sensei. You think I'd run away when such an awesome target is right in front of me?" The clone tilted its head. "Target?" Naruto found a clean right hook on his face. His body went crashing into the ground. "You called me a target, little brat?" Mizu Zabuza tilted his head again. "You think you're something? With your Hittite and your rash dreams? You wouldn't even make a sentence in my bingo book. A real ninja is one who has dirted his hands with blood and has seen the veil of death many times. But you!" He vanished again to lodge a foot in Naruto's torso and send him flying through the air. "Naruto!" Sakura grabbed the boy and pulled him up to a sitting position. He hacked a globule of blood out. "Shit!" Mizu Zabuza grinned. "Our brats." Sasuke took a look and then stepped between them and the clone. A kunai was grasped firmly in his hands as he settled into a stance. He shifted his kubikiri hocho to his shoulder. "Even you, little duck? Do you not wish to see your next birthday?" Sasuke answered by lowering his center of gravity by widening his stance. "Humph, I see. You truly believe in your delusion. But a real ninja. I had already stained my hands before I was your age." Kakashi narrowed his eyes. "The demon of the bloody mist, Zabuza Momochi. It seems my reputation precedes me." The real Zabuza chuckled. His brows tightened. "Then allow me to paint you a story with the blood of hundreds." Naruto opened his eyes. Crap on a stick, that hurt. It didn't help that Zabuza hadn't shut up once since he handed the blonde boy his backside. He really needed to stop sending his clones to training, get out of the lab more, and get some honest-to-goodness real exercise. No wonder he could barely react in time to dampen the effects of the blows. Had he not managed to jump back at the very last moment, he didn't doubt his organs would have ruptured. he had some blood in his lungs from both the Zanbatu and the kick to his damaged ribs. Q-Chi, how's the regeneration coming? Regeneration is at 89% completion, Doctor. 1 minute, 21 seconds remaining. All that is left is to mend the hairline fractures in your third right and fourth left rib. Ugh. At least now I can tell how badly I'm damaged. Before I just kinda winged it and hoped my bones didn't set backwards. He leaned forward off of Sakura's support. How we doin'? Naruto? Heavens. Is he still talking? Mizuzabuza perked up at Naruto's voice. Ah, you're awake. Surprising. I'd thought you'd be down and out for much longer. Naruto smirked and wiped the blood from his lips. Heh. I'm made from sturdier stuff than that. That's good. It just means that I have more time to play with you. He held up a finger. Hang on a sec while I deal with your friend. Sasuke barely saw the blow to his ear, deafening him and destroying his balance, which made the leg sweep from the opposite side impossible to dodge. He went down, a racked grunt and blood bursting through his lips when Mizuzabuza stomped a foot into his stomach and ground it. See? No problem at all. Mizuzabuza removed his Zanbatu from its resting place and swung it up. Time to die. Sakura didn't know what happened. One moment Naruto was leaning on her and next he was in the air, hands formed into the reverse ram seal. Kage Bunshin. A dozen Narutos sprang into existence around the nuke Nin. Get off my minion. 13 hands grabbed 13 bombs and let them loose. Mizuzabuza raised his foot of Sasuke and batted the bombs aside with a negligent swing of his Zanbatu. He followed through and cracked it into the real Naruto side. The clones burst into smoke and Naruto fell to the ground, his impact softened by Sasuke catching him, the two tumbling when he did. Mizuzabuza picked up the scraps from one of the destroyed bombs. And what's this? Some little toy that you wanted to show me? Well, I'm sorry, but... He slammed his sword tip first into the ground. Playtime is over, brats, Mizuzabuza said as Sasuke brought Naruto back to his feet. He crinkled his eyes and spread his lips. You call yourself ninjas, but you're nothing but children playing with toys. I am the demon of the bloody mist, Zabuza Momochi, and with all the power endowed in me, I command you, die. Enough. Mizuzabuza leaned forward. What was that, brat? You not done playing with your gadgets yet? Enough. What was that? I wasn't sure I could dash. A whine and a pop. A hole appeared in his head. Mizuzabuza looked up at the inch-wide gap in his forehead before collapsing into a puddle of water. The real Zabuza's eyes widened slightly. I said, enough. Naruto lowered his hand from its outstretched position, the barrel of the weapon in his hand fizzling with small sparks. His eyes were blazing, his mouth a tight line. He opened a chamber on the gun and ejected a smoking shell. Naruto flicked it into the pool that was once the water clone. Small arcs of electricity jumped from the surface. He gave the water a contemptuous glance before focusing directly on Zabuza. I was perfectly willing to play your game. I gave you the bonus of capturing Kakashi-sensei because I was sure he could cover his own ass. I even didn't mind getting my ass kicked, because I'm sure it deserves it every once in a while. He slid the gun back into a side harness inside his duster. An incisor slid out from his mouth. But then you hurt my minion. Sasuke didn't flinch that time, feeling something radiate off of Naruto that was completely unfamiliar yet not intimidating and almost inviting. And you mocked my inventions, so now I'm done dancing to your tune. Now! He smiled, more wickedly than ever before. My playtime has started. Experiment initiated. Zabuza was hardly perturbed by this change of events. He had seen guns before, but they were awkward and unwieldy and only those with no power actually relied on them. Ninjas did not use them because they were too loud, and what kind of ninja took away all of his own advantages in battle? No, this would not change things, not even the change in the blonde's demeanor, which had morphed from wide and unfocused to something defined and sharper. He was Zabuza Momochi, and some little brat that had killed a clone that was barely a tenth of his full strength wasn't something to be worried about. But just to move things along and get it all over with, he supposed he could humor the child. Really? If that's the case, then I guess I have to meet you halfway. He summoned half a dozen new water clones. Gesturing in disinterest, he commanded, "Kill them!" As they slowly advanced, each one with its own sickening grin, Naruto turned to his teammates. "Guys, I have a plan." "I think you've done enough, Dobe. Just trust me, Sasuke-kun." A dozen more shadow clones popped up. "No, just because you killed one water clone doesn't mean you can just dash." He paused when Naruto appeared right in his face, grinning happily. "Just listen, silly." He took a single finger and poked it into Sasuke's forehead. The nostalgic action of a time long past cut off any rebuttal he might have made, and Sasuke found himself nodding obediently. Naruto smiled in praise. "All right then, Sasuke Sakura. I need you to buy me some time. A couple minutes should be enough." He turned to Sasuke. "I need you to go with my clones and hold off Zabuzakuin's clones. Think you can handle that?" Sasuke shook himself out of his reverie and fell back into his condescending smirk. "Of course I can, Dobe." This was no time to fall behind. He had to get stronger, strong enough to destroy anything before him. If you could kill one, they should be no trouble for me. Okay then. He glanced at his clones. "You hear that, you cowardly lot? You can't let our minions show us up." There was a resounding cry that disturbingly resembled the Konoha beasts. Naruto grinned and fished a capsule out of his pocket. Cracking it open, a sleek Kodachi emerged with a plume of smoke. He tossed it to the Uchiha Scion. "Think this'll help?" Sasuke gave a testing slash. Well-balanced, light, a good sword. Already the muscle memory of his mother's odds and ends sword training flowed into his head. He looked at Naruto, wondering if this was planned all along. When all he received was that same knowing, infuriating smile, he shrugged. Pointless. All he needed to worry about was what was in front of him. He turned to the clones, and they stared back at the ready. With a snort, he faced the oncoming Mizuzabuzas. Sakura jumped when Naruto faced her. "Sakura-chan, I need you to protect Tazuna-sama and watch my back in case any of the water clones break through." When she started to deny her ability, he stopped her. "Don't worry, you'll do fine. I know you can do it. But just in case you feel like you can't." He pulled 5 differently colored orbs out of 5 different pockets. "Some good luck charms." She stared as they were placed in her hand. He winked. "For Sasuke-kun." She looked. Red, blue, yellow, green, and purple. They were similar to his bombs, but as large as 2 of them together. Sakura swallowed. She took her stance. For Sasuke. For the mission. For all of them. Naruto grinned deeper as the look on Sakura's face changed. "Excellent." He turned back to the fray as Sasuke and his clones fended off the Mizu Bunshin, sword flashing through the air in a graceful if inexperienced dance, and set his feet. Kinten. Baruto Tai-Ho. His right arm flared with light underneath his coat, forming in the shape of a complex seal. The air began to condense around him, chakra rending the laws of physics as it brought out the weapon locked inside. It materialized little by little, a barrel twice as long and thick as Naruto's arm creeping forward. Metal slabs burst into existence, chakra shattering like glass as they wrapped their way. Against Naruto's shoulder, thick wires looping over and under and plunging right into his arm as they sizzled with untold energy, vents opening up to suck air in with a low-pitched drone. His arm bent back, the trigger formed. 5% should do it. I would suggest one of the external batteries then, Doctor. Roger. Naruto loosened his Hittite with his free hand, revealing a choker of small metallic marbles. Taking one, he inserted it into an opening of the gun next to his ear. Start up firing sequence. Run off the external power supply. Roger. The cannon began to hum, draining energy from the minuscule orb, chakra spiraling and collecting. Matagen on. His right eye dulled in color. The inside layer shifted and then flipped to reveal an aiming reticule. His vision went dark, draining to a clear green. Data streamed across the plane, mentioning safety measures, vectors, distance. A triangle appeared, moving shakily. He moved the gun 2 degrees to the left. The triangle followed. 3 degrees up. Now it was just to the right of Zabuza. His eye spun clockwise, the distance decreasing until he could clearly see the man's bloodshot eyes. The crosshairs right between them. Track 5 degrees left, 1 down. Both cross and triangle connected. Lock on, confirmed. Set the restraining bolts. There was a whirring and 3 grapples connected to thickly woven metal strands plunged into the earth around him. The clamps locked down. Gears reversed, pulling the bolts taut. Restraining bolts, confirmed. Begin final calculations and countdown to initial shot. Confirmed. Adjusting for magnetic fields, gravity, curvature of the earth, recoil. All accounted for. Margin of error is within plus 0.75. All parameters are green. Hubie's voice heralded the end of days. 2 minutes, 14 seconds until critical voltage is achieved. Bend down. Diving Falcon goes into Wild Bear. Parry with Roichi's wall. Turn. Stab into unguarded spot and follow with Crouching Hedgehog to avoid the counterblow. Fall into Static Tree against the barrage counter. Sasuke slid to the left as a Kagebunshin took his space and blocked the decapitating downward slice with its arm guards, slipping underneath the water clone's legs and dropping a few bombs on the way. Sasuke spun the Kodachi up, deflecting a swipe from another Mizuzabuza just enough that he could feel the wind from it passing by his nose. He was frenzy, he was wildness, he was grace and elegance and death and retribution. He and Naruto's clones were holding their own, interchanging in their attacks to keep the water clones off balance. With a synchronization he never knew existed, Sasuke fell in line with the clones, blocking blows meant for them and allowing them to cover his flank. It was only their teamwork that allowed them to survive, as the water clones were stronger, more used to swordplay, and could outlast them. In fact, the weight of fatigue was already pushing him down. Combined with the devastating attack from before, his constant motion and light parries were burning through his muscles like fire. He could feel them becoming heavier, more sluggish. Perhaps the only thing that had made sure he lasted even this long was the sword Naruto gave him. Sasuke could tell it was stronger than average metal, since if he had tried to use a kunai to block the Zambuda's strokes, it would have bent and broken in no time. Even if the Zabudas were water replicas, they still had the mass and sharpness to kill, and the Kodachi easily kept in stride. It fit his hand perfectly, warm and inviting to the touch. Had the Dobe made this for him? Had he finally realized the power Sasuke needed to avenge his clan? And if so, why wait till now? Sasuke slipped back. His foot caught on an upraised root. He fell. Smacking the ground, he saw with increasing horror a water clone closing in on him. Sasuke rolled to avoid the cleave, but he was quickly followed. Little by little, he found himself separated from the safety in numbers of the shadow clones. And little by little, he found his defenses crumbling under the unstopping clash of blows. A strike numbed his hands beyond the breaking point. Another ripped the Kodachi from them completely, clanged to the ground. The Mizuzabuza grinned, freezing the boy in his sights. So it comes to this. I never would have thought that such a brat would deal me such trouble. Sasuke rubbed a sleeve across his mouth. I'm not like the others. I am a ninja. Such bravado as well. Very well, my little ninja. Allow me to christen you by showing you death. The sword came down. The wind blew, the petals spun. Sasuke dove to the side. He was tired, so tired. But he had to move faster, be stronger, live more, hate more, defeat all. It's too late for you. Accept your fate. Screw fate. Like the Dobe had said, fate was his to command, to control. He wouldn't die yet. He would live on and conquer him. It whirled in the tempest. The sword swept up, and for a moment, for the briefest span of time, Sasuke could see it. He could see it. He dodged by a hair's breadth, tumbling at the shockwaves. Foolish boy. His hand touched the hilt. tender, attracting him, molding to his soul. He wouldn't die, he wouldn't die, he would not die. Bear the fire of his soul. Die! The Zambatu came crashing down, and was sheared through completely as the blazing Kodachi met it head-on. The severed weapon fell back to its original shape, splashing everything. The sword continued, slicing the water clone crotch to face. Two met the same fate. Dirted water soaked Sasuke's hands. Sasuke panted, his nerves burning, his blood singing. He was alive. He had lived. And his opponent was trampled before him. He gazed at the Kodachi, its blade still ringing with a nimbus of chakra, its edge crystal clear and sharp. A giggle climbed its way out of his lips. He had done it. Done it. He had movement just at the very edge of his vision. One had escaped and was making its way to the target, Sakura. She was scared. She was just so goddamn scared. What was she doing here? How could she possibly think she matched up to the likes of Sasuke, Kakashi, or even Naruto? She couldn't do anything. She couldn't protect Tazuna. She couldn't back up Naruto. So why were her feet refusing to move? Why was the kunai still in her hands? Why didn't she just run? Because she couldn't do anything else but that. Because she couldn't let them down. Because she couldn't betray their trust. Because if she ran now, she would be nothing but the little girl that Ino had once protected, and she never wanted to go back to that place again. So when she heard Sasuke's shout and saw the clone break free from the battle and dash at them, she bit her tongue to drown the screams and readied herself. From the angle he was running, he had to be after. She threw a kunai at the spot where he would be next, causing him to deflect it and switch his attention from Naruto to her. The Mizuzabuza crinkled. So, even the girl tries to stop me. He glanced at Naruto for a second. Fine, I guess I can play with you instead. After all, the toy brat looks like he can't move, so I might as well fulfill my contract first and move on to him later. He held out his sword. So, how you gonna fight, girly brat? He vanished. Like this. Sakura tackled Tazuna as the sideswipe from behind missed the top of their heads by inches. Tazuna grunted in discomfort. His eyes widened and he grabbed Sakura, rolling to avoid the stab that would have skewered them both. Sakura winced before standing up again, another kunai in hand. So, even the geezer enters the fray. The clone shrugged. Why does everyone think they can fight me? It's stupidity on a fatal level. But I guess that's why you're a brat and he's a geezer. Sakura cried out as Zabuza smacked the kunai out of her hand and then backhanded her. She spat out blood, her cut gums filling her mouth up quickly. She weakly stood up again. Really? Again? Have you no shame, brat? The water copy frowned. I think that's enough. Now you're just getting annoying. And annoying things tend to die around me. He swung the Zambatu behind him in an exaggerated fashion. Sakura grunted. Her hand bumped against something her pockets and she pulled it out. One of the orbs, the red one. Naruto's wink flashed through her thoughts. For good luck. He wouldn't give her a pointless trinket, not Naruto. The boy was insane and stupid and utterly clueless, but he loved practicality and hated things that existed just to exist. So this was something to use, something to fight with. It didn't matter if she lost what sanity she had left. She would use it. She pressed the indentation. A prick of the finger and blood flowed. The orb burned. Zabuza sneered at the sight. Another toy? It makes no difference to me. I just want you to die. He swung. She tossed. The two connected. The air cracked into white as if struck by a flint, and the water clone was consumed by a raging ball of flames that stuck and burned it to nothingness. Sakura looked down at the remaining orbs in her pocket and smiled. 5. Electricity ran rampant around Naruto, crackling to and fro and lashing across the trees, scarring the bark and ripping the leaves. 4. His teeth chattered with tiny vibrations, ozone on the tip of his tongue. 3. The realm of science gathered in his palm, spiraling faster and faster. 2. A beam of ionized particles shot down the dirt road into the lake. 1. It zeroed in on Zabuza's forehead, a yellow circle of angelic light. Critical voltage has been achieved. Baruto Taiho fire. The wrath of God came crashing forth. A blinding column of light the width of a pencil erupted from the nozzle of the cannon, shooting forward, craving for something to sate its hunger. It passed through a water clone that had stumbled into its warpath. The clone wasn't just destroyed, it was obliterated, the temperature of the liquid composing it reaching up and past the boiling point in an instant as it exploded in a burst of steam. Sensing the danger, Zabuza snapped his head to the side. The laser caught his cheek, cutting and cauterizing the wound immediately and forming a long, straight burn from ear to nose. Seeing that he had missed the target, Naruto turned the cannon, following Zabuza's movements. The man, unable to avoid any more in his position, released his hold on the water prison and jumped backwards. The sphere collapsed and Kakashi leapt forth, but even he had to submit to the strength of the beam and run as it caused the lake to evaporate on contact wherever it trailed, creating a scalding spray that suffused everywhere. Both jounin were lost in the deadly mist. The beam cut out after a few seconds, and Naruto bit his lip in frustration. 5% wasn't long enough or powerful enough. Prepare the second Barawat? Warning sigils and signs flickered across his vision, refusing to follow his orders. Q-Chi. Doctor, the cooling system is malfunctioning. We cannot make a second shot in this condition. Damn it. He knew he should have worked harder on the reloading process. He was too focused on making the initial shot that he completely ignored cooling procedures. He would have to work on that when this was over. But now he growled. He would not let this stand. Kai! The cannon fractionalized into 1,000,000 pieces and was absorbed back into its storage seal. He slammed his heels together, the jets popping out and igniting fire chakra. He would not let this experiment fail. The masked Nin strained to see through the fog. This was not going according to plan. Zabuza-san was supposed to get rid of the target with little to no trouble, even with the addition of the renowned Kapinin Kakashi Hatake. And even if there was more to deal with than assumed, all Haku had to do was slip in and kill Zabuza, pretend to be a hunter Nin, and slip out with Zabuza's dead body. But that strange blonde boy had brought out that even stranger device and had proceeded to burn the entire surroundings to dust and charcoal and even catch Zabuza off kilter. How was Haku supposed to react to that? A rustling in the trees caught the faux hunter Nin's attention. Turning to the noise, Haku found that same boy dashing through the trees towards Zabuza's assumed position at an alarming rate. No doubt to try and capitalize on his success. Haku fingered the senbon clasped in dainty fingers. Should the attempt be made to stop the boy? It was doubtful that he was too much of a danger to the nuke Nin, but every threat neutralized was an increased chance of them completing the contract. And completing the contract meant they had more money to bring Zabuza-san's dream to life. Coming to a decision, Haku crouched down on the branch to hide from view. Just one senbon would put the boy out of combat. Haku did not enjoy killing, but that did not mean that one could be exceedingly merciful. So one senbon to a pressure point that would cause immediate and temporary paralysis was best. Steadying the branch to aim, Haku waited for the right time to throw a hand forward and pierce the boy right through his clavicle. But the chance never came when something splashed across the nuke Nin's mask, neck, and shoulders. Paint? Neon blue at that. It was with shock that Haku watched as Naruto lowered the gun in his hand in mid-stride, refusing to drop his pace. I don't have time for you, he said with a growl. Then he was gone amongst the treetops. Haku was still for a second before leaping after the younger child. No one had ever managed to discover the Nin's position when sniping. Haku's stealth and speed techniques were at the high Chunin level. Zabuza had to be warned about the boy's skills. Zabuza-san could not come to harm. Zabuza looked back and forth. He couldn't hear or see anything. The hiss of steam was everywhere, blocking his view, preventing him from finding his prey. His eyes strained to find anything that hinted at the location of the Konoha Nin. What the hell was that beam? What in heavens had that boy done? It wasn't a jutsu, not like anything he had ever seen. A concentrated beam of lightning chakra, perfectly compressed and more powerful than anyone he knew. Just where had the brat been hiding it, and what was he planning on doing now? And here I thought that the brat was just another stupid ninja wannabe. Then you'd be mistaken. Zabuza turned and grinned. Ah, Sharingan Kakashi. I was wondering where you had gotten to. Kakashi rolled his shoulders, still tense from his extended stay in the Suru. The steam was doing marvels for it though. You didn't think I'd leave my cute students to have all the fun, did you? His eye narrowed into a hardened slit. Don't fuck with me. I'm your opponent. He flicked the kunai in his hand. Your move. Simultaneously, their hands fell into sync and their mouths into an order. Suetun, Mizu Tepu. Twin barrels of water burst from their mouth, colliding and canceling each other out in a new rain of mist. Zabuza grunted. Something was wrong here. The water jutsu was an easy enough technique to use, but the same one at the exact same time and pace. No, the rumors of the mirror technique were just that, merely rumors. Perhaps time for a grander jutsu. Again he started, again Kakashi mimicked him. Again the same cry came out. Suetun. Suigaden. Spears of water stabbed out from beneath both of them. Zabuza ran in one direction. Kakashi followed, keeping the same distance between them, his movements precise and familiar. His hands formed into the tiger seal. No, this was a mistake. He couldn't be matching you perfectly? Zabuza paused. Monkey. Peh, he was just a man, not a mind reader, right? Zabuza stiffened. Ox. You are nothing but pallid shadow, a shallow being who can't possibly match up to the real thing. I am true power. That's it, Tiger again. You're just a mockery, a sham. Allow me to wipe away that fetid illusion of yours from reality, rabbit. Vanish dash. A shade was behind Kakashi, a shade in the form of him. Its eyes were shut tight, but when they opened he saw it, the pinwheel of death spun within its irises. But that was impossible, he was Dash, and Bird. Suetun. Daibakafu no Ju Dash. As Kakashi finished the final seal, something came at him. The mist bellowed forward, like a mutant growth, and then split open. A water clone barreled into the battlefield. Skin scalded a deep red, tackling the man and driving him further into the mist. The concentration of chakra dissipated as the interrupted jutsu faded away. Zabuza was still and then almost collapsed. He couldn't believe it, he couldn't believe that the man was real. Kakashi had finished his mirrored technique before the original. If that clone hadn't randomly run onto the scene, Zabuza knew he wouldn't have been able to win. Could the man really see the future? Were the rumors and shady legends true? No, it couldn't be. He was Tebikuro drill version. Zabuza instinctively raised his sword as the blonde burst from the mist, the spinning drill on his right hand puncturing right through the steam and forming a cyclonic effect, dispersing it behind him into a spiral tunnel. The drill connected, sparks flew, and Naruto tried to force his way through. The nuke Nin leered at the sight of blonde hair. Maybe now he could break this illusion. You're still alive, brat. I can't let my experiment get the best of me. You're mine until I say otherwise. Ho! Big words for a child, he roared, using both his hands to throw the boy off of him. Naruto hit the water and slid before gaining traction and dashing back. He punched again with the drill, shooting up with the shield to block Zabuza's crushing blow. He fell down and slipped forward, attempting to smash the shield against the man's open stomach. Zabuza retaliated by kicking it head-on, his greater strength knocking the boy back. He then flipped his Zanbato to one hand and moved it sideways, the other arm underneath, before catching Naruto on the sword's end and flicking him into the air like a catapult. Naruto caught himself and flipped away, landing softly on the water's surface. His left hand came up, deflecting the punch while his right came down to skewer the leg. The sword met it again, point whirring against the immovable side in futility. Again and again the routine repeated itself, Naruto barely blocking any martial attacks while every single one of his was quickly and thoroughly stopped by the crushing wall of metal. But he was tiring and this had to end now. Qi. Rerouting chakra to the legs and feet. Resonance frequency found. Disrupting in 2-1. Chakra surged from his soles, disturbing the surface tension of the water beneath them. Zabuza had to jump backwards lest he fall through, and Naruto took the chance to add some distance of his own. He gazed across the lake. Zabuza once again shifted his hold on his Zanbatsu, the partially defensive stance turning into a full-out offensive one. He laughed wickedly. "That's a great sword." Zabuza smiled. "Isn't it? My Kubikiri Hocho never fails to decapitate my foes." A chakra-tempered iron-based compound to allow for its weight, making it ideal to simply crush its enemies. But those circles have an almost monofilament edge, allowing a cut down to the molecular level. A perfect weapon for a man who enjoys the sight of blood. But he snapped his fingers, a basic police baton manifesting in his hands, the handle with a covered wire leading into his left sleeve. He snapped it to his leg, extending it. There's one very basic, very fatal flaw in its construction. Zabuza heaved it up. "And that is?" he asked, almost innocently. "Iron is extremely electrically conductive." His hand with the baton whipped out. Kinton. Haration. Fire. Lightning poured from the end into a destructive arc, dancing on the surface of the lake and going through the sword straight up into Zabuza's arms. He yelled in pain as his own weapon shocked his entire body. Falling to his knees, he slightly smoked while the smell of burnt flesh rose into the air. A second later, he convulsed once, twice, and rose to his feet. He looked at his Zanbatsu. Its once gleaming surface was now tarnished from the electric burns. Zabuza looked up, an expression of absolute fury on his face. "You sullied my blade." His voice was tight. "Like I said, this is my experiment, and as the subject, I can do whatever I want with you. You sullied my blade. Eh? Now who's the one that can't stop repeating himself? You sullied my blade." A crater formed in the water beneath Zabuza and then crashed outward, waves spreading from the epicenter. "A sword that belongs to one of the swordsmen of the mist, the most beautiful and powerful swords in the elemental countries. And you dared to try and ruin it." Blood rage flowed from him like a wild animal, nearly knocking Naruto off his feet from the intensity. "I'll kill you." He kicked off, rocketing at Naruto at insane speeds. Naruto shot off several more volleys with the Haration, but Zabuza simply took each one, none of them slowing him down in the slightest. When he reached the boy, he shot a fist out in a blur, impacting with Naruto's stomach. He then followed with an uppercut, shooting the boy into the air. His hands sped into a lengthy string of seals. When Naruto opened his eyes, he saw an enormous dragon of water curling through the sky. Its jaws closed themselves around him. "Oh shit!" Zabuza watched as the Suryuden blew up, the brat's body hitting the waves and sinking below the surface. He smirked. Damn brat, thinking he could win. Now all he had to do was find Kakashi and kill him too. He might need the aid of Haku quicker than expected, but he would kill the man and complete his contract. He turned to leave. Drip something caught him. Drip something wanted him. Drip something demanded him. Zabuza slowly looked over his shoulder. What he saw froze him, his thoughts, his beliefs, and his heart straight to the core. A hand was above the surface of the lake. It was scratched and mangled, but it was there. And then it moved. Slowly but surely it bent down and touched the surface. The rest of its body crawled from beneath the depths. Blonde hair followed by a whiskered face and dirty orange duster and ripped overalls and scuffed boots. It was bloodied, beaten, but in no way defeated. Zabuza trembled. An unknown emotion clawed at his brain. Two eyes of glacial blue stared back at him. "Damn it," he whispered. "Why aren't you dead?" He lifted up Kubikiri Hocho and pointed it at the boy. "Why won't you stay down? I have a dream. I will have this world bow down to me, and all who live in it will become mine to do as I please." His words were sweet like honey, laced with velvet, and as toxic as a cobra. His eyes never changed, never widened nor narrowed, never grew darker or brighter. They were the same. piercing eyes since the day he was born and the day he was born anew. No one will stand in my way. I will lord over all. Damn it. Don't think you can talk so mightily, brat. Why was he saying it like that? That treacherous tone. Did he think he was afraid? Afraid of this child? Impossible. He was Zabuza, demon of the mist. He was not afraid of anything living. Who'd ever bow to you? Didn't I say, Zabuzakuan? His tone gentler than before. I said you were mine, and I will have you. Lips curled. Always. He snapped. With a roar of rage, Zabuza ran forward and smashed the boy with his Zanbatu. Naruto skipped across the lake like a stone, rolling endlessly. The smile never left his face. Contact. Kinton. Yukabita. The board of sky and sea spilled forth, fastening to his feet and propping him up, the momentum still carrying him backwards. Pull the switch. Kinton. Cookie Wisoji. Jet mode. His back lit up, a frame of metal and leather latching around him from the seal of souls, wings, unfolding outward and afterburners blazing forth. He slowed. Shoot the moon. Kinton revised. Combo. Flight of the Osprey. Water droplets hung in the air. The wind blew without a care across his face. The sun shined down from the morning sky, basking everything in its ever-loving warmth. He flew. Zabuza had no time to react as Naruto hurtled at him like a demonic cannonball. The boy collided with him, knocking them both over and into the mango grove encroaching on the lake. He felt links of cold ice wrap around his arms, and the glint of canine teeth on a vulpine face consumed his vision. Zabuza roared and headbutted the boy. Blood flowed from his broken nose, but he refused to stop grinning. This is impossible. I'm Zabuza Mamachi, demon of the bloody mist. I refuse to be beaten by brat. With each word, he slammed his forehead against Naruto's face, breaking it even further. Blood burbling, Naruto laughed brokenly. His voice was tainted with death, calling out for its mark. Zabuza's heart and brain felt it squeeze them. He now recognized the emotion, though he refused to believe it. You call yourself a demon, but you're nothing but an imp drunk off the smell of blood. I am Naruto Uzumaki, future god of this inferior and broken world, and by the power that I am, I command you. Something poked into Zabuza's chest. It was the lightning baton. Burn. Fear and captivity had come to claim him. Full power. Switch on. The world turned to crimson amber and melted into the abyss. Kakashi finished off the clone with a stab to the heart. He couldn't believe he had been interrupted just at the climax of his victory. He knew if he had been able to complete the jutsu, Zabuza would have been beaten both physically and psychologically. It was one of the main reasons he lauded his copying skills so openly, to insert fear into his opponents' minds and break them down to the level of children. Now he had to catch the real Zabuza again before he came across any of his students. But in the warm mist, he couldn't see a thing. He was lucky that it had been thin enough near Zabuza to actually use the Sharingan. Now, if he could only determine the direction he had come from and something in his chakra senses tingled. Then it pulsed. Then it screamed. The lake exploded. Kakashi jumped to avoid the waves that crashed onto his position. The mist was blown back with the force of a hurricane, the wind from the concussive blast shredding it to nothing. Something fell from the sky, bits and pieces of trees, bushes, and fruits raining down like some celestial joke of manna from the heavens. Finding purchase back on the lake, Kakashi vaulted to where the chakra burst had originated. He knew the signature. It was Naruto. Landing back on the dirt for the first time in what had seemed like hours, and finding the rest of him team there as well, Kakashi came upon the strangest and most terrifying scene he had witnessed in years. Zabuza and Naruto were facing each other off, but they barely resembled the human beings they had once been. Naruto was coated in blood from head to toe, multiple gashes on his head and a nose that had been caved in. Zabuza was almost completely fried, burns over every part of his skin, some even looking like they reached down to the bone. But the look on his face, the expression dug into every feature was the worst part. It was absolute horror and reverence. Zabuza went to say something but never got further than the first slurred syllable when needles pierced his neck. He went down. A light-hearted giggle came from the treetops. I think that's enough, Zabuza-san. Kakashi gazed up at the voice's owner. It was a young child, a boy in his early teens by his size and timbre of his voice. A mask covered his face, Kirigakure's hunter ranks if he was correct. But what bothered him was the faint sheen of blue that colored the boy's neck and shoulders. It seemed recent and out of place. The boy nodded. Thank you for your assistance in allowing me to apprehend Zabuza-san, but I felt it was appropriate to put him out of his misery before he got into any more trouble. Kakashi shined to Zabuza's body and put his fingers to the neck, unsure of the boy's true intentions. The lack of pulse confirmed Zabuza was dead. But still, you seem fairly intimate with Zabuza to refer to him as such. The hunter Nin's head tilted. Does one not always become familiar with the prey they are destined to kill? Kakashi nearly shivered at the purity in that voice. By my guess, you're a hunter Nin from the land of mist, correct? Did the mask give it away? But yes, I am one of the shinobi ranks that make it our life and art to hunt down rogue ninja that try and escape from our laws. Naruto mumbled something and stumbled towards Zabuza. Kakashi let out a small shout of worry and caught the boy before he fell to the ground. My shubect, he wheezed, the broken nose making it hard to understand him. Mine, all mine. The hunter Nin shook his head. I am sorry, but I cannot allow that. The secrets in this body are under the jurisdiction of Kiri. You are not allowed near him. Be quiet, NYU fake Nyan. The hunter Nin recoiled as if slapped. Kakashi's concerns and suspicions grew stronger. I wanted him. I marked him. Husher mine. No one else's. He slumped forward. No one else's. Not wanting to drag this out any longer and risk discovery, the boy transported to Zabuza's body and grabbed it. That is still not possible. Your battle is over, and mine has just begun. His voice grew just the tiniest bit deeper. I must dispose of the body. With a whirl of leaves, he and the body were gone. Kakashi-sensei, NYU can't let them. Shoo, I understand. They'll come back, and when they do, we'll be ready. Naruto grinned, blood dripping from his nose and mouth in rivulets. Most of his front teeth missing, including one of his trademark incisors. The ekperimient was a shushus, Rai? Yeah, it was. K gonna go sleep now. Nighty night. He slumped into unconsciousness. Kakashi sighed, letting out all the air he was holding in. Well, at least they were all alive, if not in perfect shape, and now the air around him went wavy, and he felt his legs give out from underneath. Oh crap. He dropped Naruto and joined the boy. He had used too much of the Sharingan for too long, even though he never really finished that one huge jutsu. But the energy needed to copy, decipher, and attempt to employ all of Zabuza's techniques drained enough from him to reduce him to this state. He watched as Sakura, Sasuke, and Tazuna rushed to the both of them in a panic. Sorry about this, guys, but do you think you can carry us to Tazuna's house? Tazuna stood straight and grabbed the man underneath his arm. Of course. Sakura and Sasuke followed suit on Naruto. Kakashi gave his smile. Good, 'cause I'm gonna pass out now. And so he did. Haku went to remove the senbon from Zabuza's neck when the man grabbed the approaching hand. It trembled. Zabuza-san. That boy. That brat. He was more of demon than I know. He was more like the devil, a demon god that wants to consume the world. Zabuza-san? Haku? Zabuza flinched as the electric burns made it hard for him to twist his head. Watch out for that kid. Even more than Kakashi of the Sharingan, that kid. I understand, Zabuza-san. Haku pushed the man's hand down. Just rest. I will take care of it all. Zabuza said nothing and rested his head back on the soft, moss-covered ground. Haku's bottom lip bled. This would not stand. The person who did this to Zabuza-san would acknowledge the nature of his crimes. Haku swore it.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.